Chapter 1171. He was about to ask what the association was, but from the corner of his eye, he saw Tang Qianling getting closer and closer. He couldn't be bothered to care so much. He secretly gave the boy a look, then suddenly knocked him on the head and shouted furiously, "What did you say? You actually want to sell such a lousy guide for 60 spiritual jades? Do you really think this young master is a fool?" The boy was stunned for a moment, then immediately realized that Xiao Chen was acting. He immediately covered his head and said in a loud voice, feeling wronged, "Honorable cultivator, if you have something to say we can talk it out. We are doing business, why are you beating people up?" "Cut the crap. This young master beating you up is already considered going easy on you. Don't you know that I am from the Jia family of the inner martial arts world? Hurry up and give this young master a discount, or I will burn all your lousy guides." Xiao Chen glared and roared fiercely. Just as Xiao Chen had expected, the quarrel between the two attracted Tang Qianling's attention. He looked at Xiao Chen from afar, then looked at the boy. Although he didn't know what had happened, he still walked over with great interest. "Oh, I say, Xiao Chen, I didn't know that you could put on airs. You obviously have the surname Xiao, but you insist that you are from the Jia family. When did you change your surname? Don't tell me you married into the Jia family and became a concubine of Jia Muzin?" "Ah." Tang Qianling sneered as soon as he came up. Xiao Chen glanced at Tang Qianling and found that the black mist on his body was thicker than before. It was obvious that after cultivating, his power had greatly increased. Qing Menjing also lightly breathed. She must have also noticed that something was wrong, but she cleverly maintained her silence. Other than the two of them, no one else noticed it. "Tang Qianling, you just ate shit, right?" Xiao Chen dragged out his words unhurriedly. Then he smacked his forehead and said with sudden realization, "Oh, I understand. It turns out that the first condition to cultivate the 5 Poison Secret Manual is to first eat some shit, to fight poison with poison. I was wondering why your mouth was full of feces. Looks like you ate quite a lot." Before the pitiful Xiao Chen could finish his words, he felt the flesh on his waist being ruthlessly pinched. Xiao Chen didn't even need to look to know that it was definitely Tian Suruan's doing. After all, she also cultivated the 5 Poison Secret Manual. If he used this to tease Tang Qianling, wouldn't it be the same as teasing Tian Suruan? Looking at Tang, she looked indifferent. She didn't care about these things at all. Anyway, she knew that Xiao Chen said that on purpose, so she just shrugged and looked at Tang Qianling with a strange expression. "You." Tang Qianling was infuriated by Xiao Chen's mockery. Originally, he wanted to immediately use the 5 Poison Secret Manual he had just learned to teach Xiao Chen a lesson. However, he did not want to reveal his strength too early, so he could only turn his head and say to the little boy beside him, "Brat, did this guy bully you just now? Just say it. I'm the young master of the Tang family. There's nothing in the martial arts world that I can't handle." The little boy looked at Tang Qianling with a pitiful look, and tears kept rolling down his cheeks. He said in a weak voice, Young Master Tang, you came just in time. This guy saw that I'm young and weak, so he wanted to force me to buy the Venerable Secret Realm guidebook, but he didn't want to spend the spiritual jades. He just wanted me to give him a discount. I didn't agree, so he beat me up. You have to be my judge." "Venerable Secret Realm guidebook? What's that?" Tang Qianling was stunned for a moment, and asked in confusion. It was also the first time he came to the Venerable Secret Realm, so he didn't know much about the situation here. "Surname Tang, what does it have to do with you that I want to buy the guidebook? Get out of here if you have nothing to do with it. The further the better." Before the little boy could answer, Xiao Chen immediately frowned and waved his hand, pushing Tang Qianling a few steps away. Before Tang Qianling could lose his temper, Xiao Chen turned around and sneered at the little boy. "Brat, do you really think that the Tang family can support you? Let me tell you the truth, Tang Qianling is also a pauper. The spiritual jades in his pocket were all given to him by the Jia family. How dare he think that he can afford the ancient Venerable Secret Realm guidebook, which costs 60 spiritual jades? Dream on. What the F***CK, who the F***CK are you calling a pauper? It's just 60 spiritual jades, do you really think that I don't have any?" Tang Qianling, who was labeled as a pauper, was furious. He waved his hand and ordered Tang Qianqi, "Hurry up, take out all the spiritual jades you have, and let this country bumpkin Xiao Chen have a good look. Does he really think that he can do whatever he wants just because he's allied with the Jia family?" "All right." Tang Qianqi immediately took out a cloth bag and poured out dozens of high-grade spiritual jades. He waved them in front of the little boy and said with a faint smile, "Little boy, look carefully, these are the best spiritual jades. There are more in this cloth bag, enough to buy the Venerable Secret Realm guidebook." The little boy's eyes lit up. He immediately took out the ancient venerable Secret Realm guidebook and presented it to Tang Qianling with both hands. He then said excitedly, "Wow! So many spiritual jades. Tycoon Tang, please ride on my coattails." That's more like it. I've already ridden on your coattails, but I can consider riding on your coattails." Tang Qian glanced at Xiao Qin in a threatening manner before receiving the martial venerable Secret Realm guidebook in a pleased manner. However, before he could flip through a few pages, Xiao Qin reached out and snatched it away. "Wait." Xiao Qin held the guidebook tightly in his hand and said disdainfully, "This is the only ancient venerable Secret Realm guidebook left, and you want to buy it for 60 spiritual jades? Don't be silly, okay? Little boy, I'll pay 70 spiritual jades for this guidebook." Tang Qianling's expression changed. After reading a few pages of the guidebook, he didn't think it was worth as much as 60 spiritual jades. However, Xiao Qin's action of snatching the guidebook made him feel a little strange. In Tang Qianling's opinion, Xiao Qin was definitely not a fool. On the contrary, he was very smart. He must have discovered some secrets in the guidebook, which was why he tried to snatch it away and even paid a high price for it. "Little boy, is this really the only ancient venerable Secret Realm guidebook left?" Tang Qianling asked the little boy. "Yes, this is the only one in my bag." The little boy rolled his eyes and nodded immediately. He then said with an honest face, "Hero Xiao didn't want it at first, but after reading it once he decided to buy it. However, he thought it was too expensive and asked me to give him a discount." What happened next? Tycoon Tang, you know. Chapter 1172. The little boy was not lying about this. He had many different versions of the guidebook at home. However, the ancient version was too expensive and did not sell well. Every time he went out to sell it, he would only bring one copy. Therefore, he only had one copy left in his bag. "Isn't it just 70 spiritual jades? I'll pay 80. Kid, go get that guidebook. I'll buy it." Tang Qianling thought for a moment and said resolutely. His eyes were still fixed on the guidebook in Xiao Qian's hand. Tang Qianling concluded that there must be a secret in this guidebook. He must snatch it from Xiao Qian's hands no matter what. However, he did not dare to take it himself. The shadow of being beaten up by Xiao Qian was still fresh in his mind. He was afraid of being beaten up again. Therefore, he could only order the little boy to go. Anyway, he was protected by the Honor Mystic Realm Union Association. Xiao Qian would not dare to do anything to him. If he were to hit Xiao Qian, he would have to pay for it. "Che, I'll pay 90. I don't believe that you, Tang Qianling, have more spiritual jades than I do," Xiao Qian said with a look of disdain. "I'll pay 150. Tang Qianling roared. "I'll pay 200 spiritual jades. I'll pay 250. I'll pay." Xiao Qian was about to raise the price. However, Jiamuzhen pulled his clothes and said in a low voice, "Xiao Qian, I don't have that many spiritual jades. Don't raise the price anymore. It's enough." "This." Xiao Qian looked hesitant. He held the guidebook tightly in his hand and did not want to let go. "I say, Xiao Qian, don't play dumb if you don't have spiritual jades. Do you really think that you are a rich man because you are from the Jia family? Do you think that you own the heavenly jade mine?" Tang Qianling immediately sneered. "Forget it. Since this idiot wants the guidebook, I won't fight with him for it. It's not something particularly important anyway." Xiao Qian pretended to be carefree and shrugged, but a trace of helplessness flashed across his expression. He even flipped open the guidebook in his hand and pretended to be reluctant to part with it, as if he was trying to memorize the contents inside. "What the hell are you looking at? You poor bastard, did this young master allow you to look?" Seeing this, Tang Qianling became anxious. He hurriedly strode forward and snatched the guidebook. He carefully put it away and then waved his hand at Tang Qianxi, indicating for him to give the 250 spirit jades to the little boy. "Yeah. Young Master Ling, are we really going to give all the spiritual jades to this brat?" Tang Qianxi clutched the bag of spiritual jades with a pained expression on his face. They had only brought 500 spiritual jades with them this time. Who would have thought that they would have to spend half of it just to buy a booklet before entering the mystery territory? "Oh, what's up? Tang Qianling, are you planning not to pay after buying something? Could it be that you didn't bring that many spiritual jades with you and you want to dine and dash? Don't buy it if you don't have the money. I'm still waiting here," Xiao Qin retorted sarcastically. Tang Qianling glared at Tang Qianxi and said impatiently, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Hurry up and pay the spiritual jades. What are you dilly-dallying for? Are you happy to be scolded for nothing?" Tang Qianxi had a bitter expression on his face. Although he was extremely unhappy and doubted the authenticity of the guidebook, he still counted 250 spiritual jades and handed them to the little boy. Wow. Thank you, boss. The little boy received the large pile of spiritual jades and held them in his arms happily. He lowered his head and counted them impatiently. Ah, Xiaoqin, I'm taking this treasure. We'll never meet again. Tang Qianling held the guidebook tightly in his arms and looked at Xiaoqin and Jia Muzhen triumphantly. Then he swaggered away with Tang Qianqi. Idiot. You really treat the guidebook like a treasure. Let's see how you die. Xiaoqin did not care about Tang Qianling's gaze before he left. He looked at Tang Qianling's disappearing figure and curled his lips disdainfully. He turned to the little boy and said, How was it? You've earned quite a lot today. Shouldn't you give me my reward? The little boy was still immersed in his own world. He was grinning from ear to ear as he counted the spiritual jades repeatedly. He had really earned a lot today. Just this transaction alone was enough for him to live on for many days. Hey, my husband is talking to you. You little rascal, why are you even more of a money grubber than Sister Sour Sour? Tian Sour Sour said unhappily. Oh, right. I still owe you a guidebook. Hearing Tian Sour Sour's complaint, the little boy stopped as if he had just woken up from a dream. He casually took his backpack and placed it in front of Xiaoqin. He said cheerfully, Cultivator hero, take whatever you want. You can take as many as you want. Oh, I only need a hardcover guidebook. I don't need anything else. Xiaoqin bent down to pick up a hardcover guidebook. Suddenly he thought of something and asked curiously, Oh right, what's that alliance association you mentioned just now? Sounds awesome. What does it have to do with the Venerable Secret Realm Alliance? It's related. The little boy nodded and explained logically, the Alliance Association is a unit directly under the Venerable Secret Realm Alliance. It is also an organization formed by the large families and sects in the martial arts world. The Alliance is mainly responsible for a series of tasks when the families and sects enter the secret realm. The association is responsible for the order of the docks and the overall arrangement of the merchants here. So complicated? They have to divide this into two. Xiaoqin frowned and muttered, I think it's to make more money? Sho. Don't talk nonsense. The little boy immediately became nervous. He looked around and made a shushing gesture. The Alliance Association is fine. The cultivation of us merchants is generally not high, so we are easily bullied by cultivators. There are many masters in the Alliance Association. In order to prevent this kind of situation, we are willing to pay. Are you serious? There are really people who cause trouble at this docks? Xiaoqin was a little surprised, but then he thought of the little boy's vigilant look just now. He must have experienced this kind of experience before. Yes, I've encountered it before. Fortunately, after the association, this situation is much better. The little boy spoke methodically like an adult. After he finished speaking, he even stood on his tiptoes and patted Xiaoqian's shoulder. He said in a mature tone, But don't worry, as long as you don't mess around, they won't take the initiative to cause trouble for you. Xiaoqin was amused again. However, seeing that this little boy came out to do business at such a young age, he must have been forced by life. Xiaoqin rubbed his hair and nodded with a smile. All right, thank you for telling me. I understand. I'll take this guidebook with me for free. Chapter 1173. After bidding farewell to the little boy, Xiaoqin handed the guidebook to Jia Muzhen and told him to put it away. He looked up and saw that it was getting late, so he prepared to bring the group to find a place to eat. After walking for about 10 minutes, Xiaoqin and the group finally found a restaurant. The business here seemed to be quite good. Many cultivators were waiting in line at the entrance with their number tags. However, everyone was quite well behaved and there was no act of cutting the line. Xiaoqin and the girls discussed for a while and felt that there shouldn't be any good restaurants nearby, so they might as well choose this place for dinner. After discussing, Xiaoqin also went to the counter to get a number tag. However, this number was already at the back of the line, and there were still many people waiting in front of it. Xiaoqin had no choice but to wait. Since this restaurant's business was so good, the food should be quite delicious. In the same restaurant, Yu Dongxing was eating at a table near the corner. He raised his head and saw Xiaoqin getting a number tag at the counter. He turned to Tang Qianling and asked, Qianling, those two people look quite familiar. Are they Xiaoqin and Jia Muzhen? No way, what a coincidence. Tang Qianling turned his head in surprise and found that it was indeed Xiaoqin and Jia Muzhen. At this time they were standing outside and chatting casually. There were also a few beautiful girls standing beside them, attracting many envious gazes. Tang Qianling smacked his lips and sneered, It really is them. This kid suffered a loss in my hands today. I didn't expect to meet him here again. TSK, and he has to wait in line for a long time. I think he's going crazy with anger. What do you mean? Xiaochen looks quite smart. How could he be fooled by you? Yu Dongxing felt a little strange and asked with a smile. If Tang Qianling was a little smarter, he should be able to hear the derogatory meaning in his words. Yu Dongxing always felt that Tang Qianling's brain was not very good. Apart from being a little smart, he basically had no other good points. However, Tang Qianling obviously didn't hear it. Instead, he drank a cup of wine and said with a proud face, "Hee, I snatched a venerable secret realm guidebook from him. No, to be precise, I bought one. He originally wanted to fight with me for it, but Jia Muzhen was too stupid and didn't bring enough spirit jades. In the end, I easily took the guidebook." What? The venerable secret realm guidebook? You didn't buy it on the street nearby, did you? Is the one selling the guidebook a little boy? Yu Dongxing frowned and asked immediately. He already felt that something was wrong. Xiaochen didn't look stupid. Instead, he was much smarter than Tang Qianling. How could he suffer such a loss in Tang Qianling's hands? There must be something behind this. Yes. How did you know? Tang Qianling was oblivious to Yu Dongxing's doubts. He took out the guidebook and carefully placed it on the table. Yu Dongxing picked up the guidebook and flipped through it. There didn't seem to be anything special about it. Be careful when you flip it. Tang Qianling warned and said with a toothpick in his mouth, "This is the only ancient version of the guidebook. It has detailed records of some of the more dangerous areas in the Venerable Secret Realm. It even has a map. When we enter the Venerable Secret Realm in a few days, this guidebook will definitely come in handy. That fool Xiaochen didn't have enough spirit jades and still tried to snatch it from me. Qianling, you've been cheated. This guidebook is useless. How many spirit jades did you spend on it?" Yu Dongxing put down the guidebook and shook his head helplessly. It was just as he had expected. This Tang Qianling was really a stupid pig. That's impossible, right? Tang Qianling was stunned. He shook his head in disbelief and said, "I spent 250 spirit jades to buy it." Tang Qianling picked up the guidebook and flipped it open again. Both the handwriting and the map were extremely clear. It didn't look fake at all. What? You spent 250 spirit jades to buy this lousy thing? Yu Dongxing was shocked. He looked at Tang Qianling as if he was looking at an idiot and said, "In the past, our Yu clan's elder also bought this kind of guidebook. However, he only spent 50 spirit jades. Isn't it just 200 spirit jades more expensive? I don't lack that amount of money. As long as the quality of the item is good, it's fine." Tang Qianling's heart skipped a beat. However, he still pretended to be generous and waved his hand. However, after our elder bought it and flipped through it, he realized that other than the map, the other notes were completely useless. The key is to rely on one's own strength. Yu Dongxing sighed. He really couldn't bear to expose Tang Qianling's daydream. How can that be? At that time, Xiaochen really wanted to snatch it from me. He even compared the price with me. However, Jia Muzhen didn't have enough spirit jades on him. That's why I bought it first. If this thing is useless, then there's no need for him to waste my time. Tang Qianling still didn't believe Yu Dongxing and argued. Yu Dongxing cursed Tang Qianling in his heart for being an idiot. However, he said, "Xiaochen must have colluded with the guidebook seller to trick you. This thing is really not worth that price." Damn. That bastard Xiaochen, I'll teach him a lesson later. Tang Qianling was finally convinced. He angrily slammed the table and grabbed the Honorable Realm guidebook, wanting to tear it apart. Wait, this guidebook. Yu Dongxing quickly grabbed Tang Qianling's hand and looked at him hesitantly. Tang Qianling then realized that the guidebook's map could still be used. Tang Qianling angrily put down his hand. He felt that he had lost face, so he fiercely said, "That brat is really too much. He even dared to deceive this young master. Tomorrow I'll smash his stall and teach him a lesson." Qianling, let's forget about this matter. You know how strong Xiaochen is. Before you become an honorable, you'd better not fight with him directly. Yu Dongxing shook his head and continued to warn him, "As for that little rascal who sold the guidebook, don't even think about touching him. After all, you were willing to spend spirit jades to buy the guidebook. If this matter were to be reported to the Alliance, let alone you, even your Tang family might not be able to handle it." Actually, Yu Dongxing didn't like Tang Qianling very much. He also didn't care where he went to cause trouble. However, this little rascal had some value. Moreover, the Yu family and the Tang family had a good relationship. Now that Jia Huiyan had disappeared, Yu Dongxing could only choose to accept a stupid friend like Tang Qianling. Chapter 1174. Tang Qianling was so angry that his head hurt. However, he knew that Yu Dongxing was right. Currently he could not do anything to Xiao Qian. With nowhere to vent his anger, he could only grit his teeth and glare at Xiao Qian, hoping to kill him with his stare. Unfortunately, Xiao Qian was talking to a few pretty girls and did not even look at him. Tang Qianling wasted half a day's effort. Is number 12 here? There's an empty table now. You can go in and eat. On the other side, a table of people had already finished eating. After clearing up the empty plates on the table, the waitress ran to the people in the queue and shouted, "Yes, yes, we are number 12. Tian Xiaoring jumped 3 feet high and raised her hand excitedly. "Please give me your number plate. This way." The waitress took the number plate from Xiao Qian's hand and pointed in the direction of the empty table. Tian Xiaoring took the lead and quickly ran to the empty table. As she ran, she rubbed her stomach and said, I've been waiting for so long. Sister Xiaoring's stomach is almost flat from hunger. Hurry up and bring the best dishes in your restaurant." "Oh." Before Tian Xiaoring could finish, 3 young men suddenly rushed over from behind her. Not only did they knock her to the ground, but they also occupied the only empty table. "Waitress, hurry up and bring the best wine and dishes. We still have business to attend to after our meal." One of the men with a black dragon tattoo on his arm waved his hand casually. Seeing that the waitress was still in a daze, he frowned and shouted, "Didn't you hear what I said? Hurry up and get the chef to cook. Why are you still in a daze?" The waitress was a little displeased with the tattooed man's behavior. However, she still said politely, "I'm sorry, this table belongs to the customers over there. If you want to eat, please take a number at the door and line up." Xiao Qian walked over and helped Tian Suruan up first. Just as he was about to go over and teach those people a lesson, he saw a young man with one eye covered by a black cloth slamming the table and shouting, "Give AF asterisk king name." Since there was no one sitting at this table, it naturally belonged to whoever came first. "You're just a waiter, someone who serves food and runs errands. Why are you pretending?" "That's right. What kind of service quality do you have? Hurry up and serve the dishes." The tattooed man glared at him and pointed at the young man with a mohawk. "We are treating Brother Sure today. Don't save money for us. Bring us the most expensive dishes. Prawns that cost 38 renminbi each, crabs that cost 200 renminbi each, get them all." "You." The waitress was trembling with anger, but before she could speak, Xiao Qian stepped forward and sneered, "Brother shit, right? Didn't your mother teach you to be civilized and polite? Not only did you steal my seat for no reason, but you also knocked down my girlfriend. You didn't even apologize. I think you might as well skip the meal and go home to eat sh*t. Motherf***, are you looking for death, Xiao Qian?" The person who was addressed as Brother Sure with his back facing Xiao Qian was instantly enraged. He turned around and was about to flip out when he suddenly realized that the person standing in front of him was actually Xiao Qian. He immediately had a look of surprise on his face as he said, Why are you here? Aren't you a rogue cultivator from the secular world? How can you participate in the Venerable's secret realm? Are you a follower of the Jia family? Did you even sneak into the Venerable's secret realm?" "Shi Yuchuan, don't talk nonsense." Xiao Qian stared coldly at Shi Yuchuan in front of him. He enunciated each word clearly, "I'll give you a chance now. First, apologize to my wife, Tian Sour. Then, pay her 500 spiritual jades for her medical fees. Otherwise, don't even think of leaving this place alive." Although Xiao Qian didn't show it on his face, he was a little surprised. When Shi Yuchuan knocked down Tian Xiaoring, Xiao Qian had already recognized him. He just didn't have the time to say it. "Damn, where did this brat come from? You're courting death." The tattooed man suddenly stood up. He activated his mental cultivation and displayed the strength of a level 3 demon king. He swung his fist and punched at Xiao Qian's face. Xiao Qian raised the corner of his mouth and was about to fight back. However, before he could do anything, Tian Xiaoring, who was standing next to him, suddenly stepped forward and kicked the tattooed man's chest. The man was kicked out of the restaurant and smashed into the stone wall on the opposite side. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Yeah. Xiao Qian's husband, isn't Sister Xiaoring powerful? She kicked the big man with the electric eel tattoo away. Wasn't the posture just now very cool? Tian Xiaoring was so excited that she danced with joy. She pulled Xiao Qian and asked repeatedly, "Electric eel? Why do I feel that he tattooed a dragon?" "Forget it, who cares?" Xiao Qian scratched his chin and said to Shi Yuchuan, "How about it? After seeing how powerful my wife is, do you have anything else to say?" If not, apologize quickly and compensate with spiritual jades. Don't waste my time. We're still waiting to eat. Oomph. You're just a tomboy who only knows how to use brute force. You Xiao Qin, other than living off a woman and hugging her family's thigh, what else can you do? Shi Yuchuan thought that Tian Shaoring was just a little stronger. He snorted and looked at Xiao Qin mockingly. Looks like you're not going to apologize? Xiao Qin's face darkened slightly. His tone was a little impatient. Apologize. Stop joking. Shi Yuchuan laughed and immediately displayed the strength of a half-step martial supremacy. He said proudly, Xiao Qin, do you think I'm still the Shi Yuchuan who pretended to have a stomachache and slipped away at the Jia family? Since I'm able to participate in the supremacy secret realm, I naturally have full confidence. Before Shi Yuchuan finished speaking, Tian Shaoring pretended to be surprised. She covered her mouth and said exaggeratedly, Wow, Xiao Qin's husband, this person looks so powerful. I'm a little scared. Ah, Xiao Qin, look, your wife has better eyesight. Shi Yuchuan was very pleased and laughed wildly. He raised his eyebrows at Tian Shaoring and said, Little girl, don't follow that useless Xiao Qin anymore. Come and follow me. I guarantee that I can make you want to die every day. I'm definitely more powerful than Xiao Qin. Thinking back to when Ling Er had her virginity taken by Xiao Qin, Shi Yuchuan still resented her to this day. Now that he saw that Tian Shaoring's looks were not bad, and her every move was very flirtatious, he felt that his lower abdomen was already starting to stir. Previously, when Shi Yuchuan went to the Jia family to participate in the clan's competition, his strength was only at the first level of a martial king. When he thought of how he suffered when he followed Xiao Qin, he was so scared that he ran away and did not even dare to participate in the competition. However, after returning, Shi Yuchuan felt that something was wrong. He was not convinced. Why should he be afraid of Xiao Qin? Shi Yuchuan was no longer the weak chicken he used to be. He was an important person in the sect. Therefore, he had to find an opportunity to take revenge. Chapter 1175. Even though Shi Yuchuan was only the nephew of one of the elders in the Six Directions sect, that elder's status had risen ever since he had successfully brought back the forging materials. He now had a considerable say in the Six Directions sect. Everyone believed Shi Yuchuan's report and no one bothered to verify its authenticity. Later on, by chance, the sect leader of the Six Directions sect had obtained a high-rank pill that could rapidly increase the power of a martial king. At that time, the martial king disciples of the sect had fought fiercely over it. Shi Yuchuan had used his strong background and his ability to curry favor with the sect leader. He had also secretly framed the other disciples and finally managed to obtain the right to use the pill as he wished. That was why Shi Yuchuan was able to break through to the Martial King realm at the Martial King realm in such a short period of time. With the help of other abundant cultivation resources, he had even reached the Martial King realm. When the sect leader of the Six Directions sect saw that Shi Yuchuan had such a talent for cultivation and that he was quite fond of him, he had allocated a place for Shi Yuchuan to explore the martial honor realm in the hopes that he would be able to improve his strength as soon as possible so that he could contribute more to his sect in the future. This time he had coincidentally bumped into Xiao Qin once again. How could he not be excited? How could he not be excited? He finally had a chance to avenge his past humiliation. Shi Yuchuan, don't get too carried away. Have you forgotten about how you were burned by Xiao Qin? Don't forget the pain once the scars have healed. Ling Er finally could not stand it any longer. She stepped out from behind Xiao Qin and scolded him in a sweet voice. She was not afraid that Xiao Qin would injure Shi Yuchuan. Instead, she was worried that if the matter were to get out of hand, it would attract unnecessary trouble. Therefore, she had stepped out to remind Shi Yuchuan to behave himself and not provoke the wrong people. Otherwise he might lose his life. Ling Er? I didn't expect you to be here too. Shi Yuchuan finally saw Ling Er and was instantly stunned. When he saw the goddess whom he had once loved and adored standing in front of his enemy to protect Xiao Qin, he felt a faint sense of pain in his heart. With mixed feelings, Shi Yuchuan stared at Xiao Qin fiercely and said sarcastically, Xiao Qin, you're quite willing to spend your capital. You even brought a low-level cultivator like Ling Er into the venerable realm. It seems like she's been trying to please you in bed. Shi Yuchuan, you shut up. Xiao Qin is not as shameless as you. Compared to him, you are simply scum. No, you're not even scum. You're a beast that's worse than pigs and dogs. Ling Er was so angry that her entire body was trembling. She pointed at Shi Yuchuan and scolded. All right. Very good. You slut. Back then you flirted with this young master. Now that you've found someone else, You actually dare to point at my nose and scold me. Fine, none of you can leave today. All of you will die in my hands. Shi Yuchuan did not get angry. Instead he laughed. He gathered the martial qi in his body into his palms and flew towards Linger. However, Shi Yuchuan had only taken 2 steps when he saw a giant fireball with a whistling sound. It emitted a scorching aura as it flew towards him. Shi Yuchuan's expression changed. Although he was still quite a distance away from the fireball, he could already feel the burning pain on his face. It was obvious that the person who released the fireball was not weaker than him. Could it be that Xiao Qin had also reached the venerable realm? How was that possible? Feeling helpless, Shi Yuchuan could only change his position and push the martial qi in his palms towards the giant fireball. Shi Yuchuan also knew that the fireball was very close to his body. If he did not extinguish this thing first, it was very likely that he would be hit by the fireball before he could even touch Linger. He might even be killed by the fireball. Boom. In the blink of an eye, Shi Yuchuan's martial qi and the giant fireball collided. He originally thought that he could easily dispel the aura of the giant fireball. However, he did not expect the reality to surprise him. Shi Yuchuan's martial qi seemed to have entered a bottomless pit. Not only did it not weaken the power of the giant fireball, but it also strengthened a lot. Shi Yuchuan was shocked. He took 2 steps back and realized that the fireball was still following him. He moved a few more steps and dodged left and right. The fireball seemed to have its own navigation system. It was still flying towards him, ignoring the people around it who were running away. This time Shi Yuchuan was really at his wit's end. Although the speed of the fireball was not too fast, it was still approaching him. Shi Yuchuan, who had no other choice, could only reach out and gather his martial qi. He wanted to use all his strength to resist it. What? How is this possible? It's burning me? When the fireball came into contact with Shi Yuchuan's palms, the raging flames directly vaporized his fingers, revealing the eerie white bones inside. Seeing that Shi Yuchuan's arms were gradually engulfed by the giant fireball and listening to his heart-wrenching screams, Jia Muzin's face was a little solemn. He took 2 steps forward and whispered to Xiao Qin, "Xiao Qin, that's enough. Don't kill him. This place is not like the Jia family. If something really happens, it will be difficult for us to escape." "Oh, it's just burning his hands. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Xiao Qin nodded with his arms crossed. He was still watching the scene leisurely. Xiao Qin had never thought of killing Shi Yuchuan. Otherwise he would not have tortured him like this. Wouldn't it be more efficient to just kill him with a slap? If it weren't for Shi Yuchuan's cheap mouth, Xiao Qin would have already thrown him out of the restaurant and sat down to eat by himself. The one-eyed young man who came with Shi Yuchuan was dumbfounded. He was also shocked. He didn't expect Xiao Qin to be so powerful. He didn't even know how this guy made his move. He seemed to have just casually waved his hand and threw out a big fireball. This guy, what kind of strength does he have? On second thought, the one-eyed man felt that if he continued to stay here, his ending would definitely not be any better than the tattooed man and Shi Yuchuan. Seeing that everyone's attention was focused on Shi Yuchuan, he took the opportunity to sneak away. Yu Dongxing, who was sitting in the corner, couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when he saw the situation. Tang Qianling was even more relieved. Fortunately, he didn't impulsively confront Xiao Qin. Otherwise, the person whose arms were burned would most likely be him. After a while, Linger pulled on Xiao Qin's sleeve and said softly, "Xiao Qin, that Shi Yuchuan seems to be about to be burned to death. He has already received the lesson he deserves. Why don't we let him live?" After a while, Linger pulled on Xiao Qin's sleeve and said softly, "After all, the Yinyun sect and the Six Directions sect had some friendly relations. Although Shi Yuchuan's mouth was cheap, Ling-er couldn't just watch him die. Otherwise, she would definitely be punished by her master when she returned. Alright, since Linger's wife has spoken, then let's forget about it." Xiao Qin didn't insist. He smiled and casually condensed a water ball technique. He raised his hand and threw it at Shi Yuchuan. Chapter 1176. With a splash, Shi Yuchuan's whole body was drenched, and the originally burning flame was extinguished. Shi Yuchuan, who had been screaming at the top of his lungs, immediately shut his mouth. He lowered his head to look at his own charred body and his 2 arms that had been burnt out of shape. With a cry, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. He fell to the ground with a thud and there was no sound. It was unknown whether he was alive or dead. Just as Tian Wangchuan was about to say a few words, he suddenly saw Xiao Chen's figure flash and disappear from the hall of the restaurant. Where did Xiao Chen's husband go? Could it be that he had an emergency and went to the toilet? Tian Wangchuan blinked his eyes and asked doubtfully. Just when everyone was a little puzzled, Xiaoqin quickly returned, carrying the escaped one-eyed man in his hand. He stood in front of Shi Yuchuan and said faintly, "Go and take your brother's shit away. We still need to eat. Putting a pile of shit here really spoils our appetite." Ouch. Before the one-eyed man could figure out what was going on, he was thrown to the side of Shi Yuchuan by Xiaoqin. The one-eyed man, who was dizzy from the fall, shook his head. As soon as he turned his head, he saw that Shi Yuchuan was burnt black and couldn't be seen, but he seemed to be breathing. The one-eyed man was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He quickly took out a medicinal pill from his pocket and stuffed it into Shi Yuchuan's mouth. At the same time, he didn't forget to reply to Xiaoqin, "Yes, yes, I'll take him away immediately. I won't dare to disturb the great hero's meal." Phew. I can finally eat. Xiaoqin couldn't be bothered with the one-eyed man anymore. He turned around and greeted the waitress who was hiding far away. He said with a smile, "Can I trouble you to bring the menu over for me to take a look? Also clean the floor while you're at it." The restaurant was quiet, and the other cultivators who were eating were a little dumbfounded. They all avoided Xiaoqin the bully. The further the better. Some cultivators were so scared that they didn't even have the mood to eat. They paid the bill and prepared to leave. Who dares to cause trouble at the pier? Just as the cultivators were about to leave after paying the bill, a group of people suddenly barged in and blocked their way. The leader of the group stood up and looked around before shouting. Xiaoqin turned around and glanced at the newcomers. He realized that they were all dressed in neat uniforms. There was a special symbol on their arms and chest that looked like a badge. They seemed to be from the Alliance Association. Most importantly, the group of people gave off an aura that was as thick as a mountain. Every single one of them was at least a fifth-layer martial honor, and they didn't try to hide it at all. The leader of the group was an expert at the peak of fifth-layer martial honor. Jia Muzin narrowed his eyes when he saw the unfriendly expressions on the people's faces. When he saw the symbol on their uniforms, he was shocked. He didn't expect that he would still alarm the guards of the Union Association. Moreover, there were so many venerable realm experts. Jia Muzin shook his head regretfully. If he had known that this would happen, he wouldn't have come here to eat. Who would have thought that they would encounter such bad luck? The team leader looked down at Shi Yuchuan's charred body, and then looked at the unconscious tattooed man lying on the ground outside the door. His expression became serious and he waved his hand. The team members behind him immediately stopped the cultivators who were preparing to leave. The leader glanced at them, then at the one-eyed man who was supporting Shi Yuchuan. He said in a deep voice, "Stop right there. What is going on? Who injured these two people?" Reporting, "Leader, it was that kid who did it." One-eyed was overjoyed. He carefully put Shi Yuchuan down, then pointed at Xiaoqin and Tian Sauer and complained, "We were just having a nice meal here, but we didn't expect that brat to rush up and beat us up without saying anything." "All right. And that girl, she was the one who kicked the tattooed man out. Go arrest both of them." The leader of the group waved his hand with a gloomy face. The team members behind him pounced forward like wolves and tigers, surrounding Xiaoqin and Tian Sauerly. They were in a fighting stance, ready to take action at any time. "Wait." Xiaoqin suddenly stood up and shielded Tian Sauerly behind him. He said calmly, "Just now, everyone was waiting in line for their number to be called. We could only go in to eat when our number was called. It was originally our turn, but the one-eyed man and his accomplice snatched our table for no reason and even knocked my wife to the ground. I was kind enough to reason with them, but I didn't expect them to ignore me. Instead, they hit my wife. I had no choice but to fight back. There's no proof. Who can testify for you?" The leader of the group looked at Xiaoqin from head to toe and asked with a wave of his hand. Clearly, he did not believe what Xiaoqin had said. The situation at the scene was obvious. Everyone on Xiaoqin's side was safe and sound, sitting there waiting for their meal. Shi Yuchuan was covered in soot and his breathing was weak. There was also another person lying outside. No matter how one looked at it, it was Xiaoqin who was bullying them. It was normal for the leader to not believe his words. "I can prove that it was the guy on the ground who made the first move." A crisp voice rang out. The waitress from before walked over and pointed at Xiaoqin and the others. "These guests received their number plates and could have come in to eat. But not only did the one-eyed man and his accomplice snatch their table, they even insulted me. You one-eyed dog. After all this, it turns out that you were the one who started it first. How dare you frame others?" The leader was so angry that his face turned purple. He stomped to the one-eyed man, raised his hand and slapped the one-eyed man on the head. The one-eyed man was slapped and spun in a circle. He could not help but see stars. He felt dizzy in his head and swayed for a long time before he stood firm. Looking at the angry leader in front of him, the one-eyed man realized the seriousness of the problem. He immediately put on a sad face and pointed at Shi Yuchuan, who was burnt on the ground. He stammered, Captain, I'm wronged. It was Shi Yuchuan who instigated me to do it? That's not. Wait, what did you say just now? The leader's eyelids suddenly twitched and his words were stuck in his throat. He looked down at the young man on the ground who was burnt and dirty. It was difficult to distinguish him. He tentatively asked, You said this guy's name is Shi Yuchuan? Are you sure you didn't mistake him for someone else? Yes, this is Shi Yuchuan. We did have dinner with him, but now he has been burnt black by that hero's fireball. How would I dare to lie to you? Although he did not know why the leader asked this, the one-eyed man nodded honestly. Chapter 1177. The leader took a deep breath and felt his scalp tingle. He looked down at the guy whose face couldn't be seen clearly and lamented in his heart, How can this person be Shi Yuchuan? How can I explain this to him? Xiaoqin, why do I feel that something is not quite right? Why don't we stop eating and go back to the inn first? Seeing the leader's expression suddenly become dignified, Jia Muzhen vaguely felt a little bad in his heart. It seemed that something big was going to happen. Xiaoqin frowned. Before he could reply, a ringtone suddenly rang. Everyone was startled. Then a mobile phone slipped out of Shi Yuchuan's pocket. Obviously, someone had called him. The one-eyed man looked down and saw the shining mobile phone. He was about to bend down to pick it up, but the leader was one step ahead of him. He quickly picked up Shi Yuchuan's mobile phone. After looking at the caller ID, his face suddenly changed. He whispered a few words to his men, then pressed the answer button and walked out of the restaurant. The guards who had surrounded the one-eyed man with the leader received the order. After looking at each other, all the team members slowly dispersed. Some of them blocked the door, and the others gradually moved closer to the position where Xiaoqian and others stood. It's too late. It seems that the leader and Shi Yuchuan have an affair. Let's not act rashly. Xiaoqian shook his head slightly and whispered. He was not a fool. Naturally, he saw that his group had been surrounded by the guards. However, he did not intend to use force for the time being. He was going to observe the situation first and then make a plan. Tang Qianling and Yu Dongxing, who were hiding in the corner, also looked at each other. They thought that the one-eyed man would definitely be caught and Shi Yuchuan would be dragged away. They estimated that the matter would be left unsettled. They didn't expect another wave to rise before the first wave subsided. The two put down the chopsticks in their hands at the same time and stared at Xiaoqian's group with great interest. They had an attitude of watching a good show. The one-eyed man also saw that the situation was a little wrong. His slightly bowed back gradually straightened, and the look of fear also receded from his face. Not long after, the leader came back, but behind him was an old man with an ashen face. The old man was holding Shi Yuchuan's phone in his hand. As soon as he stepped through the door, he saw Shi Yuchuan lying on the ground with a charred body. Yuchuan. The old man yelled and immediately rushed to Shi Yuchuan's side. He first checked his breath, then grabbed his wrist and began to concentrate on feeling his pulse and examining his injury. After a long time, the old man finally finished examining Shi Yuchuan's injuries. He shook his head helplessly, and his already ugly expression became even more sinister. The guard captain who was watching from the side was a little uneasy. From the looks of it, it seemed that he could not be cured. The old man slowly stood up. His body shook as he released a monstrous aura. He coldly glanced at everyone in the hall and said word by word, "Who was it that injured my nephew like this? Hurry up and come out, or this old man will make all of you die a horrible death." A 10th layer venerable realm perfected expert. Apart from Xiaoqin, everyone else in the hall felt a little suffocated. They could only silently endure the waves of pressure emitted by the old man, feeling extremely shocked. Xiaoqin, on the other hand, did not seem to care. He stood there leisurely with his arms crossed. Although the old man's aura was indeed very strong, it was not to the extent that it could make Xiaoqin feel afraid. At that moment he was thinking about some unimportant questions. For example, if Shi Yuchuan was this old man's nephew, then where were his parents? Could it be that there was some kind of melodramatic plot behind this? Like the novel about Ouyang Feng and his nephew? Was he actually an illegitimate child? In fact, this old man was Elder Gu of the Six Directions faction, Shi Yuchuan's uncle. Recently, the faction leader had aged and was about to elect the next faction leader. Elder Gu had put in a lot of effort to help Shi Yuchuan obtain a recover pill and brought him to the honorable realm for a promotion. This was all so that he could have a useful person under his command and use this opportunity to strengthen his position in the Six Directions faction. This was to prepare himself for the fight for the position of faction leader in the future. In the end, he did not expect Shi Yuchuan to suddenly meet with an unforeseen event before he even entered the honorable realm. His arms had already lost their vitality. Even if he managed to heal them, he would become a cripple in the future. Old senior, you came at the right time. That guy was the one who injured Brother Shi. The one-eyed man quickly pointed at Xiao Chen as if he had seen his savior and complained angrily. The one-eyed man could also tell that the leader of the guards was probably a good friend of Elder Gu. Otherwise, he would not have brought him here, nor would he have stood by the side and let him handle this matter. One had to know that the management power of the guards of the Union Association was not to be underestimated. As long as they had a valid reason, they could even kill someone directly. Moreover, they would not have to be held accountable by their superiors after the matter was over. Other than the president of the Union Association, no one else had the right to investigate whether they had done anything wrong. The leader of such a powerful guard team had actually chosen to stand by and let the old man handle this matter himself. This old man must have an unfathomable background. Who are you? Elder Gu did not immediately believe the one-eyed man's words. Instead, he glanced at him and asked expressionlessly. The one-eyed man smiled and explained in fear and trepidation, I am Brother Shi's sworn brother. Today we wanted to treat him to a drink, but who would have thought? Ouch! Before the one-eyed man could finish speaking, he felt someone kick his chest hard as if he had been hit by a heavy hammer. The ribs in his chest made a series of kacha-kacha sounds, and then his whole body was sent flying out of the door. He landed on the ground with a thud, spat out a mouthful of blood and directly passed out. Trash. I've already warned Shi Yuchuan not to associate with trash like you, but this brat just wouldn't listen. Now he is asking for trouble. Elder Gu spat in the direction of the one-eyed man and said disdainfully. Tang Qianling and Yu Dongxing were dumbfounded. They had originally thought that Elder Gu would directly find trouble with Xiao Chen, but they did not expect him to beat up the one-eyed man first. What kind of trick was this? Jia Muzhen, Cheng Menjing, and the other women also opened their mouths slightly, looking surprised. Why did this old man not follow the script? Elder Gu, what you did is not very in line with the rules. This dock is under the control of the Union Association. If you want to vent your anger, you can do it to the person who hurt your nephew. Why do you have to kill innocent people here? The leader of the guards could not help but frown when he saw this scene. Chapter 1178. Although Elder Gu and I are friends, isn't it a little too much to kill someone in front of everyone? This was completely looking down on him, not taking him seriously at all. I've already given you face. Otherwise, that one-eyed kid wouldn't be seriously injured but a cold corpse by now. Elder Gu raised his brows and narrowed his eyes at the leader. Leader Xiao, don't tell me you've forgotten how you got this position in the first place? Do you think you'd be where you are today if it wasn't for our sect supporting you? Ahem, as long as he's not dead. Leader Xiao's expression was a little ugly, but he still coughed and said, I can understand how you're feeling right now, but I hope you'll hold back and don't make things too difficult for me. I don't need you to teach me these things. Elder Gu snorted softly and turned around. He saw that the others were cowering in fear from his aura. Only Xiao Chen remained standing, neither servile nor overbearing, and even dared to look him in the eye. Elder Gu was somewhat surprised. Elder Ji's eyes narrowed and his expression turned serious. He thought for a moment and said tentatively, Kid, I can't believe you didn't run away. I didn't know you had guts. I think I've seen you before. Alright, don't try to get close to me. I'm not your godfather and I don't have any red packets to give you. Xiao Chen shrugged and yawned. Kid, don't be too presumptuous. You might bite your tongue if you speak too loudly. Elder Gu sneered and looked at Xiao Chen suspiciously. Could it be that Xiao Chen was really that confident? Or does he not feel that I'm a perfected martial venerable? Xiao Chen stretched lazily, waved his hand and said, Shi Yuchuan, that trash was beaten up by me. If you want to take revenge for him, then hurry up and come. I'm still starving here. However, let me remind you that I've already killed a few perfected martial venerable experts like you. Don't think that I'll go easy on you just because you're older. Ah, alright. Elder Gu was not angered by Xiao Chen. Instead, he threw his head back and laughed out loud. However, his laughter spread out with the help of the martial qi in his body. The sound waves caused everyone present to feel a stinging pain in their ears. After laughing for a while, Elder Gu abruptly stopped laughing. He stared intently at Xiao Chen and quickly drove the martial energy within his body. Flames burst out from his tightly clenched fists. As martial energy surged into his fists, the flames grew stronger as well. It was as though he was accumulating power. Yo, it's quite similar to mine. Xiao Chen looked at Elder Ji's flames with interest. Elder Gu ignored Xiao Chen's words. Instead he said coldly, "Arrogant brat. Although I don't know if you're really stupid or if you're hiding something, it doesn't matter anymore. Don't even think about leaving here alive today. Captain Xiao, let me confirm again. You're not going to interfere in this matter, right?" Xiao Chen could not be bothered to waste his breath on Elder Gu. Instead, he turned to look at Captain Xiao and asked with an indifferent expression. Captain Xiao's expression was a bit complicated. He lowered his head and thought for a while. Then he took a few steps back and nodded. "Well, this is a personal grudge between you two. Although I'm the law enforcement captain of the Union Association and am in charge of the security of the dock, this matter is not within my scope of involvement. You can go ahead as long as you don't hurt the innocent." "Oh, okay. I was waiting for you to say that." The corners of Xiao Chen's mouth curled up. He raised his hands and condensed a huge water ball technique in his palms. Xiao Chen decided to defend himself first. It would be very dangerous to attack rashly before he figured out Elder Ji's moves, so he did not intend to do so. Although Xiao Chen's current strength was enough to fight a venerable at the perfected stage, he did not dare to take it lightly. After all, he did not gain any advantage in his previous 2 fights with a venerable at the perfected stage. The first time was when he fought with Jia Jinyan. If not for Jia Jinyan's old injuries and his monstrous recovery speed, it would have been hard to say who would have won. The other time he had relied on a successful sneak attack to catch Sidu Qiqian off guard and cause him to suffer some superficial injuries. It was Xiao Chen's first time officially fighting a venerable at the perfected stage. Although he was not flustered, he still wanted to accumulate some experience first. "Kid, so your martial technique is of the water attribute." Elder Gu curled his lips and mocked, "Unfortunately, your strength is too weak. You're only at the peak of a second stage venerable. Even if your attribute restrains me, it's basically negligible." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Ji's body trembled. His arms suddenly split into 2, then into 4. Finally, he looked like a crab, waving his 10 arms on his shoulders. Furthermore, each of his fists was covered in flames. The raging flames surrounded Elder Gu, and he looked extremely shocking. The guards who were standing beside him immediately took a few steps back. "Wow. Impressive, impressive. You're going to perform a 1,000-hand." Xiao Chen was about to comment, but before he could finish, he saw Elder Gu waving his fists of flames and rushing toward him. Xiao Chen quickly spread his hands, and the round ball of water instantly turned into a wall of water, blocking in front of him. "Haha, kid, you're quite flexible, but you're still too naive." Elder Gu laughed maniacally. Then he waved his 10 arms at the same time, passing through the wall of water from different angles. Although the flames on Elder Ji's fists had been extinguished by the wall of water, his momentum did not diminish. He fiercely attacked several vital points on Xiao Chen's body. Although Xiao Chen had expected that the wall of water would not be able to stop Elder Gu, he did not expect that Elder Ji's fists did not slow down at all after passing through the wall of water. Xiao Chen hurriedly tilted his body wanting to dodge, but the 10 fists were just too many. He could dodge here but he couldn't dodge there. In the end he still took a few solid punches. Fortunately they didn't hurt any vital parts. He was only beaten until he swayed, unable to stand properly. "I didn't know that you had such quick reflexes, kid. Why don't you try this again?" Elder Gu retracted his fists and once again gathered 10 balls of flames. This time he did not move. Instead he stood on the same spot and waved his arms quickly. With a swoosh, 10 afterimages of flaming fists suddenly appeared in the air. They cut through the air in unison and attacked Xiao Chen like arrows released from a bow. After Xiao Chen was hit, he didn't even have time to steady himself. Seeing that the fiery afterimage fists had already rushed in front of him, he considered that the water wall wouldn't be able to block these fists. He hurriedly opened and closed his hands, quickly building an ice wall in front of him. Chapter 1179. Dong dong dong. A series of crisp knocking sounds could be heard. As the ice wall that Xiao Chen had condensed in a moment of desperation was too weak, the 10 residual image fists easily shattered it. The afterimage fists, that pierced through the ice wall flew towards Xiao Chen. The flames on the fists were not extinguished. Only a few muffled sounds could be heard. Those afterimage fists ruthlessly smashed onto Xiao Chen's body and very quickly set his clothes on fire. Puff. Xiao Chen had nowhere to disperse the force and was instantly sent flying by the fist. Bang, bang. He crashed into countless tables and chairs and flew a long distance before he was able to disperse the impact of those afterimage fists. He lay on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. His situation was very similar to the one-eyed man's. Not bad, no wonder you dare to challenge me when you're only at the peak of the second-level venerable realm. Elder Gu leisurely walked towards Xiao Chen and praised, to be able to turn the water wall into an ice wall in such a short period of time, such quick thinking and adaptability is already considered good for someone your age. At the very least, you're much better than that little rascal Shi Yuchuan. Xiao Chen did not respond. He only lay quietly on the ground without moving. If it were not for the fact that Elder Gu could still feel Xiao Chen's faint breathing, he would have thought that Xiao Chen had been beaten to death. Xiao Chen. Husband Xiao Chen. Looking at Xiao Chen, who was lying motionless on the ground with no signs of life or death, Cheng Minjing, the girls, and Jia Muzhen were burning with anxiety. Their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Just as they were about to rush over to help, they discovered that the guards had already surrounded them without them knowing. They were unable to rush out at all. As for Captain Xiao, he directly stood in front of them. His meaning could not be any clearer. He had already stated that this was a personal grudge between Xiao Chen and Elder Gu. Not only would he not interfere, but he would also not allow anyone else to cause trouble in the middle. On the other hand, Tang Qianling and Yu Dongxing, who were in the corner, looked relaxed. They almost wanted to high-five each other in celebration, especially Tang Qianling, who was extremely excited. He couldn't wait for Elder Gu to kill Xiao Chen as soon as possible so that he could avenge himself. Alright, although you're talented, it's a pity that you've hurt my nephew. An eye for an eye. Now you have to pay with your life. Elder Gu slowly raised his hand and stared at Xiao Chen. Remember, in your next life, don't mess with people you shouldn't mess with and lose your life for no reason. Old thing, I know I'm very talented, but it's not right of you to compare me to a piece of trash for no reason. Just as Elder Gu was gathering his energy and preparing to kill Xiao Chen, a voice suddenly rang out. The people around them were stunned. They looked at each other, wondering who was playing a prank on them. Cheng Minjing, Tian Souring, and the other women were instantly overjoyed. Others might not be able to tell, but they could clearly hear that voice. It was Xiao Chen's voice. Xiao Chen, who was lying on the ground, moved slightly. He reached out a hand and patted the dust off his body. Then he propped himself up. He was full of vigor and vigor. It was impossible to tell that he had been seriously injured. You can still... Elder Gu was stunned. Looking at Xiao Chen, who was standing in front of him as if nothing had happened, a look of disbelief flashed across his eyes. Haven't you heard that the same move can't be used against a Saint Seiya twice? Xiao Chen said calmly. However, at this moment Xiao Chen was rejoicing in his heart. It was a good thing that nascent soul cultivators were able to heal themselves quickly. Otherwise, if he couldn't recover in time and Elder Gu punched him again, he would really have to eat his lunch box. Ah, what a sharp-tongued young man. Elder Gu quickly gathered his thoughts and looked at Xiao Chen coldly. I'd like to see if a so-called Saint Seiya like you can withstand the baptism of countless flaming fists. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Gu raised his martial chi to the maximum. His 10 arms waved at a speed that could not be seen by the naked eye. In a short period of time he created countless afterimage fists, densely circling around him. A strong and suffocating pressure spread out. It was obvious that Elder Gu wanted to use this attack to kill Xiao Chen. The temperature in the restaurant continued to rise with the increase of the afterimage fist. Many of the weaker cultivators had already begun to sweat profusely. Some of them were even circulating their mental cultivation methods to quietly resist the pressure, deeply afraid that they would be innocently affected by Elder G's martial skill. Old thing, let me give you a word of advice. You're already so old. Don't get too excited. This is a bad habit. Once you get too excited, you'll suffer from a heart attack. While everyone was shocked, Xiao Chen's expression was still very calm. He shook his head and said, "A sick person can't see their surroundings clearly. It seems that I'll have to wake you up." Suddenly, a bluish-purple flame appeared in Xiao Chen's left hand. The tip of the flame trembled slightly, as if he was pouring all his primordial chi into it. Such a trick I've already... Elder Gu was about to say something when Xiao Chen suddenly waved his hand and threw the flame into the air. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the bluish-purple flame. After it rose into the air, it instantly exploded into countless bluish-purple flames. These flames all formed a cylindrical wall of flame, tightly protecting Xiao Qin in the middle. His face could not be seen clearly. What? Elder Gu was stunned. He had already prepared himself for this. Because Shi Yuchuan had been seriously injured by the fire, he knew that Xiao Qin must have a fire attribute martial arts skill. When Xiao Qin suddenly ignited the flame, Elder Gu thought that he was fighting with his life on the line. He did not expect him to be able to split so many flames at once, and control them so perfectly. The most important thing was that the color of the flame was very strange. Unlike ordinary flames, it was not crimson. Instead, it was bluish-purple. It gave Elder Gu a sense of extreme danger. What is this thing? That's right, what did you say just now? You want me to go through the baptism of countless punches? Xiao Qin stood in the flames. His eyes were illuminated by the flames, making him look very abstruse. I did a rough count. You only have over 100 fist afterimage. Even if you round it up, it's not countless. This? Elder Gu was a little speechless. The muscles on his face trembled slightly. Could it be that he had really misjudged this time? This guy was really hiding his strength? By the way, I have 1,875 flames here. That's 10 times more than you have. Even so, it's still far from countless. Xiao Qin said calmly. Although you're old, you should still be more cautious. There's no point in boasting. Chapter 1180. Elder Gu looked at the relaxed man in front of him and felt a deep sense of fear in his heart. He suddenly remembered something. Didn't I beat him until he was on the verge of death? Why does he look like he's not injured at all? I'm done explaining. Little Nethery, you can send this old thing to hell. Xiao Qin smiled faintly and waved his hand. The flames of the underworld around him trembled and let out a whistling sound as they flew towards Elder Gu at the same time. As it flew, the flames of the underworld gradually condensed and became smaller and smaller. The whole fireball became bigger and bigger. By the time it reached Elder Gu, it had already become a super big fireball. Save. Before Elder Gu could finish his sentence, the huge fireball swallowed him and the 100 or so afterimage fists surrounding him. In an instant, all of them were burned to ashes. Not even a speck of dust was left behind. The restaurant was completely silent. Everyone was shocked to the point their jaws almost hit the floor, and they were unable to say anything. A gust of cold wind blew out of nowhere. Other than Jia Muzhen, Qing Menjing, and the other women, everyone else felt a slight chill, and a sense of fear rose from the bottom of their hearts. They did not expect this unknown young man, who they had never seen before, to be able to kill a perfected martial highness so easily with his cultivation base at the peak of the second-layer martial highness realm. This man was too heaven-defying. Was he a demon? Yu Dongxing and Tang Qianling broke out in a cold sweat. If not for the fact that everyone was standing still, they would have crawled under the table and silently prayed that Xiao Qin couldn't see them. At this moment, the two of them had a common understanding. Although the Tang clan and the Yu clan were already the top clans in the internal martial arts world, if they really fought with Xiao Qin, they wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. They might even suffer a great loss. The two of them looked at each other tacitly. It seemed like they had to find help to deal with Xiao Qin. The guards, who were originally aggressive, were a little frightened when they saw Xiao Qin's valiance. For a moment they were at a loss. They put down their weapons and looked at Captain Xiao, waiting for his instructions. "Sai, I didn't expect to meet so many idiots when I came to this restaurant for a simple meal." Xiao Qin shrugged helplessly and walked toward the door of the restaurant. As he walked, he said, "Let's go back to the inn. I've lost my appetite because of this group of people." Xiao Qin even gave Jia Muzhen, Qing Menjing, and the other women a look, signaling them to follow closely behind him. It seemed like he was preparing to run away. He had to run. Although he had released a majestic move, Xiao Qin's primordial qi was instantly drained after he released it. Now he was no different from an ordinary person. Even a low-level cultivator could easily kill him with a poke, much less these guards at the Supremacy Realm. "Brat, you've killed someone and you still want to leave?" Unfortunately, before Xiao Qin could even reach the door, Captain Xiao reacted first. He took a few quick steps forward and blocked Xiao Qin's way. He shouted with a gloomy expression. "What? If I don't leave, do you think I'll wait for you to treat me to a meal?" Xiao Qin did not rush out. Instead, he calmly stopped and said, "Captain Xiao, remember that I asked you before we started the fight? At that time, you clearly said that this is a personal grudge between me and that old thing. You don't intend to intervene. Could it be that you're going back on your word now?" Captain Zhao's expression froze. He gritted his teeth and continued to block Xiao Qin's way, not moving. Naturally, Xiao Qin understood the reason behind this. Although Elder Gu was very disdainful of Captain Xiao and even insulted him, the two of them were obviously very close. Otherwise, Captain Xiao would not have been so shocked when he first heard Shi Yuchuan's name. He would not have used Shi Yuchuan's phone to lure Elder Gu to this restaurant. I did say that. Captain Xiao took a deep breath and said word by word, but you should also remember that when Elder Gu attacked that one-eyed man just now, I also warned him not to kill him. Now that Elder Gu has been killed by you for no reason and this happened in my territory, I have to give a reasonable explanation to the higher-ups after all. Xiao Chen smiled coldly and moved his body slightly. Captain Xiao immediately waved his hand and ordered the guards to surround them as if he was facing a formidable enemy. I've told you the cause of the matter. I hope you can come with me to the Union Association to make a record. Captain Xiao stared at Xiao Chen and said in a low voice, Husband Xiao Chen, don't listen to this person's nonsense. Sister Souring thinks that they will definitely create a hide-and-seek incident for you or some sudden death incident. Don't go, it's easy to guess such a thing. Tian Souring pulled Xiao Chen warily. She still felt that Captain Xiao wanted to take Xiao Chen away on purpose and then find a time when no one was paying attention to secretly get rid of Xiao Chen. Don't worry, what hasn't your husband Xiao Chen seen before? Those people in the secular world are much more cunning than those in the martial arts world, but I still managed to fool them. What can a security captain of a small dock do to me? Xiao Chen said with a smile. However, although Xiao Chen was teasing, his body involuntarily became alert. This was also to prevent Captain Xiao from suddenly attacking him. However, now that there was not a single drop of primordial qi left in his body, he could only try his best to adjust his breathing. Are you from the secular world? Captain Xiao asked doubtfully. Xiao Chen spread out his hands and did not answer. He was indeed from the secular world, but he had first entered the Jia family as a foreign minister. However, there was no need for him to say these things to Captain Xiao. Captain Xiao's face darkened. After a while, he seemed to have suppressed his anger and said coldly, The venerable realm has always only been entered by the sects and clans of the inner martial world. The rogue cultivators of the secular world are not qualified to enter. Hurry up and get lost or don't blame me for being rude. Captain Xiao also wanted to kill Xiao Chen. He could also hear that Xiao Chen was mocking his identity. How could he not be angry? However, he knew that this was not the time to worry about this. Even an expert like Elder Gu, who was at the perfected honorable realm, could not last more than a few moves against Xiao Chen. He was only at the peak of the 5th stage of the honorable realm. Xiao Chen could probably kill him easily with a flick of his finger. Originally, Captain Xiao wanted to follow the rules of the Alliance Association and take Xiao Chen to the association before taking action. However, from the conversation between Tian Souring and Xiao Chen, it was obvious that Xiao Chen would not give in obediently. Chapter 1181. If Xiao Chen refused to go, then he would have to use force. Xiao Chen and the others would definitely put up a desperate fight. By then, there would be unnecessary casualties. If this matter got out of hand and was reported to the president of the Union Association, then he would be in the wrong from the beginning. If the investigation was carried out, he might even lose his position as the team leader. Thinking of this, Captain Xiao chose another path. He felt that since Xiao Chen and the others were disbanded cultivators from the secular world, he might as well chase them away. As for Elder Ji's death, he would blame it on Xiao Chen. If the Six Directions faction decided to make things difficult for him, he would ask them to go to the secular world and cause trouble for Xiao Chen. The same goes for the rest of you. Before Xiao Chen could say anything, Captain Xiao pointed at Jia Muzhen, Cheng Menjing and the other girls and shouted, The honorable mysterious realm is for high-level cultivators from the internal martial world. Only those who have paid a sufficient amount of spiritual jade are qualified to participate. Although I don't know how you trash cultivators from the secular world managed to sneak in, it's not important now. Get lost. Cheng Menjing, Tian Wangsua, and the other girls were very unhappy. Just as they were about to speak, Jia Muzhen suddenly blocked their way. Hee, since the Union Association does not welcome us to participate, then we will take our leave. Jia Muzhen laughed coldly. Oh, by the way, pass a message to your president. The Jia family of the internal martial world will never interfere in the honorable mysterious realm again. As for all the resources of the honorable mysterious realm Union Association and the Union Association, I will take care of them when I get back. Goodbye. Originally, Jia Muzhen was already very displeased that Xiao Chen had been chased out for no reason. He did not expect that he would be implicated as well. After he finished speaking, Jia Muzhen did not stop and immediately walked towards the restaurant's entrance. Hey. Wait a minute. Captain Xiao was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. At first he thought that this four-eyed guy looked ordinary and was probably Xiao Chen's follower. He definitely didn't have any power backing him, so he should be from the secular world. After all this time he was actually from the Jia clan. He could not afford to offend the Jia clan. The Jia family had provided all the spiritual jades used to activate the formation of the honor mystic realm in the past. The operation of the formation consumed an extremely large amount of spiritual qi. Just the 100 pieces of spiritual jade that everyone had to pay was far from enough. If they wanted to activate the formation, they would need the Jia clan to provide another large amount of spiritual jade. Otherwise, it would be impossible to maintain the normal operation of the formation. Therefore, the Jia family had a lot of say in the venerable mystic realm alliance. They were the god of wealth that everyone had to worship. The key point was that the Jia family had always been led by Jia Yubian in the past. This Captain Xiao was very familiar with Jia Yubian, but he didn't recognize the new young patriarch, Jia Muzin. As a result, he was dumbfounded. Previously, Captain Xiao had only been concerned that he could not offend Elder Go. He did not expect that he would offend the Jia clan, a giant that he could not afford to offend. At this moment he was so regretful that his intestines were turning green. "Oh, young hero, please hold on." After calling out to Jia Muzin, Captain Xiao was already at a loss for words. At this moment, a quick-witted team member suddenly came over and whispered a few words into his ear. Captain Xiao's eyes immediately lit up. He looked at Jia Muzin with a smile and said, "Young hero, since you claim to be a member of the Jia clan, can I trouble you to show me the family token to prove your identity?" This time it was Jia Muzin's turn to be stunned. He opened his mouth but did not know how to answer. His expression was a little hesitant. Tian Sour did not notice that Jia Muzin's expression was strange. He gently pushed Jia Muzin and continued to encourage him enthusiastically, "That's right, Four Eyes. Since this security captain is so curious, why don't you satisfy his wish? Show him the family token and give him a good slap in the face. Sister Sour has long disliked him." Xiao Chen could tell at a glance that Jia Muzin did not move. He probably did not bring the family token with him and had probably left it in the inn. After all, they had already registered outside before entering the pier. They had also confirmed their identities as members of the Jia clan. Now that they were out shopping and eating, wouldn't it be superfluous to bring the family token with them? I left the family token in the inn." Jia Muzin finally said helplessly, "Why don't you go back with me to take a look? I am the third-generation disciple of the Jia clan, Jia Muzin. When I parked the car just now, I had already registered." Without waiting for Jia Muzin to finish, Captain Xiao impatiently waved his hand and interrupted what he was about to say. "Alright, don't say such useless things. If you can't show me the family token, how can you prove that you are a member of the Jia clan? You even said that I would follow you back. How would I know that you people would not take the opportunity to escape?" Captain Xiao said coldly. "What are you talking about? Why would we run away? Sister Sour has roamed the Jianghu for so many years and has never done something as tasteless as running away." Tian Sour protested confidently, completely forgetting that she had escaped from the Tang clan. "I'm not too sure about that." Captain Xiao glanced at Xiao Chen and said disdainfully, "After all, the cultivators in the secular world have inferior characters. Who can say for sure? You guys should go back with me first. When the time comes, there will be a chance to verify your identities." "What are you saying? Who are you saying has inferior characters? What did the secular world do to you? Explain yourself." Cheng Menjing was immediately unhappy. How could there be a regional bias? Xiao Chen patted Cheng Menjing's shoulder gently to comfort her. Then he stared at Captain Xiao and said lazily, "I say, as a security captain, you are quite good at putting on airs. It seems that I have to use my ultimate move." "Ultimate move? Don't tell me his token has gone to you again? I'll wait and see." Captain Xiao did not believe him at all and sneered. Xiao Chen cleared his throat and shouted at a table in the corner, "Yo, young master Tang, are you guys eating? Have you finished? Have you guys had enough of watching the show? Why don't you get over here and explain yourself? Are you waiting for me to invite you over?" When he walked into the restaurant's lobby, Xiao Chen had used his divine sense to detect that Yu Dongxing and Tang Qianling were hiding in a corner eating and whispering to each other. Tang Qianling had even glared at him a few times. Yu Dongxing had probably seen through his act of tricking him into buying the guidebook. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with them. After all, he was only here to eat. As long as these two fools did not provoke him, he would go his own way. However, the situation was different now. Since Jia Muzin did not bring his family's token, he could only invite these two good-for-nothings to come over and clarify things. This would save him a lot of trouble. Chapter 1182. Hey, what are you shouting for? What do you mean by less sugar, less salt, less vinegar? Are you trying to find someone to fool me again? Captain Xiao reprimanded with some dissatisfaction. But just as he finished speaking, he saw two young people stand up from the corner and slowly walk towards him. At first glance, they seemed a little familiar. Hey, isn't this Xiao Chen and Master Jia? I didn't think it would be such a coincidence to meet you here. It's all my fault. I was so focused on eating that I didn't recognize the two nobles. I'm ashamed. Yu Dongxing's face was stiff as he forced a laugh. He walked to Xiao Chen's side and enthusiastically cupped his hands at him and Jia Muzin. Oh, Xiao Chen, Jia Muzin, you guys are here to eat too. Tang Qianling had an expression as if his father had died. He didn't even bother to pretend and dawdled as he greeted them. Although the two of them were extremely unwilling, since their identities had already been exposed by Xiao Chen, they could only help him explain. Otherwise, with Xiao Chen's posture just now, they would be dead with just two small fireballs. Looking at the two of them greeting each other politely, Captain Zhao's heart sank to the bottom. At this time he had already recognized Yu Dongxing and Tang Qianling. He also thought of their identities. These two people were the legitimate successors of the Yu clan and Tang clan. Since they both knew Xiao Chen and Jia Muzin, then, did I really blame them wrongly? Don't play the game of calling me brothers. Xiao Chen waved his hand impatiently and said with slight sarcasm, do you really think I don't know? You guys should feel happy when you saw me getting beaten up just now, right? How could that be? Just now. Yu Dongxing still wanted to say a few words to smooth things over. Unfortunately, he couldn't say anything for a long time. Don't think of a reason. I'm tired just looking at it. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth twitched. He pointed at Captain Xiao and said, hurry up and tell that stupid security captain. I think he's still asleep. He actually dared to doubt the identity of the Jia clan's current young clan lord. He doesn't even have the slightest bit of insight. I really don't know how he became the team leader. Xiao Chen, don't be too resentful. After all, Captain Xiao is busy with work. He sees hundreds of people every day, if not thousands. It's normal to see one or two people wrongly. Let's talk it out. Yu Dongxing gritted his teeth and put on a fake smile. Yu Dongxing was very dissatisfied with Xiao Chen's arrogant character. However, he could only suppress his anger and speak up for him. After all, he wasn't Xiao Chen's opponent. Although he really wanted to lie through his teeth, his life was more important. Tang Qianling could only smile along. He turned to Captain Xiao and said, that? Captain Xiao, this Jia Muzin? Young master is indeed the Jia clan's young clan lord. And that Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen is also his good friend. Young master, you and I can vouch for them. What? That. Captain Xiao opened his mouth and was speechless for a long time. In his heart, he hated these two rich playboys to death. You two playboys obviously know the identity of Jia Muzin and Xiao Chen. Why didn't you come out and tell me earlier? You even had people urge me to come out. Now I can't get out of this embarrassing situation. What should I do? I say, young master Yu, young master Tang, that security captain obviously doesn't believe your words. He is so dedicated to his duty. You should also quickly take out your family's token. Otherwise, you will be brought back for interrogation like us. Xiao Chen continued to be unrelenting. No. Captain Xiao forced a smile that was uglier than crying. I have met young master Yu and young master Tang before. Therefore, it is impossible for me to be mistaken. Since they can personally testify to your and young master Jia's identity, then it must be true. I believe you guys. Really? Then do we still need to confirm our identities? We are all cultivators from the secular world. Our characters are relatively inferior. Perhaps we followed Jia Muzin in. Aren't you going to kick us out? Cheng Minjing looked at Captain Xiao with a smile. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. She used her gaze to stab daggers into his body. Xiao Chen inwardly laughed. Eldest Miss hasn't flipped out in a long time. This Captain Xiao is really the type to get scolded for no reason. There is no need. Captain Zhao's face turned green. He fiercely glared at the team member who had suggested to him. It was all this guy's idea. Why did they have to check our identities? This time they had stirred up trouble. Since our identities have been verified, then why are you still here? Why don't you hurry up and continue patrolling the docks? Continue your promising job as a security captain. Who knows, There might be cultivators from the secular world sneaking in from other places. Xiao Chen expressionlessly said. Captain Zhao's body trembled. He didn't know what to say. He could only submissively cup his hands. Suppressing the dissatisfaction and resentment in his heart, he dejectedly left the restaurant with his group of subordinates. After waiting for the guards to leave, Xiao Chen stretched his back and rubbed his stomach. Suddenly he remembered that he hadn't eaten yet. He called for the waiter. Bringing Tian Suruan and the rest to their original seats, Xiao Chen ordered all the expensive dishes. He then pointed at Yu Dongxing and Tang Qianling who were tiptoeing out of the door. He said to the waiter, "This meal is on those two young masters. Don't let them run away. Remember to let them settle the bill first." "All right, I understand." The waiter was afraid of Xiao Chen's power and didn't dare to ask any more questions. He nodded his head and directly took the bill to Yu Dongxing and Tang Qianling's side. "Two young masters, the dishes on this table, including the ones you didn't pay for earlier, cost a total of 102 spiritual jades. I'll help you round up the bill for a total of 100 spiritual jades. Please pay." Yu Dongxing's face fell. Just now he and Tang Qianling were in a hurry to escape and forgot to pay the bill. Now it was all together. "What? Young master, you doesn't have the money to pay? That Tang Qianling beside you seems to be quite rich. In the afternoon he spent 250 spiritual jades to buy a booklet. He probably has more spiritual jades than he can spend. You can ask him to borrow some," Xiao Chen said with a smile. I have money. Although Yu Dongxing was furious, he didn't dare to go against Xiao Chen's wishes. He also couldn't ask Tang Qianling for money. He could only reluctantly count out 100 spiritual jades and hand it over to the waiter. "Xiao Chen, aren't you going a little too far?" Tang Qianling was once again poked at his scars. Finally he couldn't take it anymore. He pointed at Xiao Chen's nose and angrily scolded, "We have helped you so much. Not only do you not want to repay us, you want us to fork out spiritual jades to treat you to a meal? You're simply too arrogant." Chapter 1183. Beat you guys up? Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said with a look of sudden realization, "Oh, that's true. You helped me. Now that you're requesting me to beat you up, I definitely won't refuse. It's a small matter." Tang Qianling had yet to react when he saw Xiao Chen roll up his sleeves and stride towards him. After this period of recuperation, the essence in Xiao Chen's body had recovered quite a bit. He rushed over and kicked Tang Qianling to the ground. Then he punched his face. Xiao Chen, you bastard. It hurts." Things happened suddenly. Tang Qianling did not have time to defend at all. He could only passively take the beating, crying out continuously for a moment. He originally wanted to scold Xiao Chen a few more words. But before he could brew up, his face suffered dozens of punches. Although they were all ordinary punches and kicks that did not contain essence, it was still extremely painful. He could not say anything. Yu Dongxing, who had just finished verifying the spirit jades with the attendant, was immediately stunned when he saw this scene. What was the situation here? How did Tang Qianling offend him again? But Yu Dongxing quickly recovered. No matter what the situation was, he could not watch Tang Qianling get beaten up by the side. Stop fighting. Xiao Chen, what are you doing? Why did you start fighting all of a sudden?" Yu Dongxing hurriedly persuaded. But he did not go up to stop the fight. Instead, he stood a little further away. "Oh, didn't this surname Tang request me to beat you guys up? I've already fulfilled his wish." Unsatisfied, he punched Tang Qianling a few more times. Only then did Xiao Chen slowly stand up. He clenched his fists and slowly walked over to Yu Dongxing. Looking at the deathly pale Yu Dongxing, Xiao Chen smiled warmly and asked, "All right, it's your turn next. Feel free to say how you want to be beaten up by me. No matter what strange fighting method, I'll satisfy your request." Misunderstanding. Yu Dongxing was so scared that he quickly hid to the side. He carefully helped Tang Qianling, who had been beaten like a pig, and retreated to the door. He squeezed out a stiff smile and said to Xiao Chen, "Hero Xiao, I don't think you need to repay me. This is just a small matter. We have such a good relationship, so why do you treat me like an outsider? I'll take my leave first." After saying that, Yu Dongxing didn't wait for Xiao Chen's response. He immediately helped Tang Qianling turn around and quickly slipped away. In a hurry, when he stepped out of the hotel's door, his foot slipped and he even tumbled. Tang Qianling also fell flat on his face. However, Yu Dongxing quickly stood up again. He dragged Tang Qianling and scrambled back to where they lived. Looking at the two sorry figures, Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows disdainfully. He was too lazy to chase after them. He turned around and called Jia Muzhen, Qing Menjing, and the others to sit down. Finally they began to eat quietly. After helping Tang Qianling back to the inn, Yu Dongxing examined his injuries. Fortunately they were only superficial wounds. For a cultivator they were basically harmless and would quickly recover. Yu Dongxing first applied some external ointment to Tang Qianling, then helped him lie down. He sat down and recalled what happened today. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. This meal was too unlucky. Not only did he testify for Jia Muzhen and the others, he also spent a lot of spiritual jades to treat them to a meal. Not only did this Xiao Chen not remember his kindness, he even wanted to beat him up because of Tang Qianling's words. Wasn't he being a little too unreasonable? Xiao Chen, this guy, just because he had some ability he bullied the Yu clan and the Tang clan. What a *king despicable thing. Yu Dongxing suddenly stood up and paced back and forth. He gritted his teeth as he picked up his phone and dialed a number. Hello, Xiaoyu? Didn't I tell you not to call me if there's nothing important? After the call was connected, a gloomy voice came through. It was obvious that the voice was somewhat dissatisfied. Elder son, I know you're busy. If there's nothing important, I wouldn't dare to disturb you. However, Tang Qianling was injured by Xiao Chen just now. Moreover, that guy killed a martial supremacy in front of many people. Yu Dongxing said with a serious expression. What? Xiao Chen? What's going on? How did you get involved with him? Didn't I warn you not to have a direct confrontation with him? Elder son frowned and asked in a slightly reproachful tone. We didn't provoke him on purpose. It's like this. Just now, Tang Qianling and I were eating in a restaurant and then... Yu Dongxing explained what happened in detail. Idiot. The people of the Six Directions faction are a bunch of stupid pigs. Elder son could not help but curse after listening to the whole story. He wasn't surprised that Xiao Chen was able to kill a venerable perfection stage expert. If it wasn't for his sect leader, Sidu Qitian's quick reflexes, he would probably have fallen into Xiao Chen's trap as well. Elder Gu must have been careless and was tricked by Xiao Chen. After thinking carefully for a while, Elder Sun said in a deep voice, How about this? I can't explain it clearly over the phone. Later, after I'm done with the trivial matters of the sect, we'll find a place to meet and discuss about this guy. Elder Sun, what do you plan to do? Yu Dongxing's heart skipped a beat as he asked tentatively. This time we'll discuss a foolproof plan. We must find a way to get rid of Xiao Chen. Leaving this uncertain factor alive is too great a threat to our future plans. Elder Sun's tone revealed a hint of ruthlessness. And alright, Elder Sunday. Then I'll wait for your news. Yu Dongxing quickly nodded and agreed. After hanging up the phone, Yu Dongxing secretly heaved a sigh of relief and clenched his fists. Now, as long as the head of the inner martial world, awakening sect, was willing to make a move, that Xiao Chen would not be able to live for long. Xiao Chen, I'll let you be smug for a few more days. Yu Dongxing, have such self-restraint, what harm is there in tolerating you for a few more days? When that time comes, I'll see how you die. At this time, Xiao Chen, who Yu Dongxing had been talking about, had just finished his dinner and was strolling back to the inn with Jia Muzhen and the others. In order not to affect Xiao Chen, Qing Menjing and the other girls' dual cultivation, Jia Muzhen and Qing Menjing got separate rooms to stay in, leaving the largest room for Xiao Chen and the others. Qing Menjing had just returned to her room and hadn't even had the time to tidy up when she suddenly received a call from Elder Sunday. Elder Sun first followed his usual routine and quickly asked a bunch of strange questions. After Qing Menjing finished answering them one by one, he was finally able to confirm her identity. Oh, you've been following Xiao Chen for a long time. Have you completed the task that the sect master gave you? Elder Sun then got to the point and questioned, have you found out anything about Xiao Chen's martial techniques? Chapter 1184. I found out a part of it. Xing girl thought for a while and decided to answer according to what Xiao Chen had taught her before. I heard that he has a special skill called Saint Seiya. It seems like he can clear his mind and not accept anything fake. From cosmetic surgery to hypnotic illusions, they all have no effect on him. Really? Elder Sun asked doubtfully. Is there such a powerful martial skill? Why haven't I heard of it before? There is. Today he had a conflict with the Six Directions faction in the restaurant. I think he used this martial skill. After that, Elder Gu could only stare at him helplessly. No matter what you say, you can't fool him. He used this to defeat Elder Gu? Elder Sun furrowed his brows. Why does this seem to be different from what Yu Dongxing described? Of course not, he also used another kind of martial skill. Little Miss Xing vividly said, I heard that this martial skill is called the Phoenix Illusory Demon Fist. What the hell is Phoenix? How can there be a martial skill with such a long name? Elder Sun was stunned when he heard this. What the hell was this? There is. Xiaoqin relied on this Phoenix Illusory Demon Fist to kill Elder Gu, who was originally especially awesome and powerful. Miss Xing vowed solemnly, the scene at that time was extremely spectacular. The entire restaurant was densely packed with the fireballs that Xiaoqin released. Then with a whoosh he killed Elder Gu. That guy didn't even have a speck of dust left. Elder Sun was dumbfounded. He felt that little Miss Xing's description of Xiaoqin was too miraculous. He didn't seem like a human anymore. Instead he seemed like a god. Elder Sun? Elder Sun. Little Miss Xing exaggerated the scene in the restaurant several times. After hearing that there was no response from the other end of the phone, she tentatively shouted a few times. Elder Sun, are you still there? Have I completed my mission? Can I return to the sect now? Ah? Oh, cough cough, not yet. Elder Sun finally regained his senses. He pretended to cough twice and said, your investigation of Xiaoqian's martial skills is not thorough enough. You have to continue following him and obtain more accurate information. So it's like that. Xing girl curled her lips. I knew you would say that. Anyway, I don't want to go back to that foul open heaven gate. Elder Sun suddenly thought of something and instructed in a low voice, yes, right? Don't run around randomly after you enter the Exalt Secret Realm. At that time, there will be an important mission for you to complete. Okay, what's the specific content of the mission? Little Miss Xing casually asked. I can't tell you for now. Someone will contact you when the time comes and tell you what to do. Elder Sun's tone was a little serious. After all, Elder Sun had lived for a long time and was very experienced. At this moment he had already recovered from the shock of Xiaoqian's martial skills. He felt that little Miss Xing's words were a little inaccurate and was a little dissatisfied with her. But little Miss Xing acutely sensed the change in Elder Sun's emotions. However, under the influence of a strong sense of curiosity, she really wanted to know what the mission was. What? Are you going to disobey my orders? Elder Sun was already a little displeased. No. I just want to know about the mission earlier so that I can make some preparations in case it's too late. Little Miss Xing was afraid of arousing Elder Sun's suspicions and swallowed her words. If Elder Sun feels that it's not appropriate, I will definitely listen to you. That's good. There's no need to prepare in advance. When the time comes, you will naturally know what you have to do. Elder Sun nodded his head in satisfaction and said slowly, before entering the Exalt Secret Realm, continue to investigate the situation of Xiaoqian's martial skills. Alright, that's all for now. After hanging up the phone, little Miss Xing originally wanted to immediately go over and tell Xiaoqian about the situation. However, when she reached the door she turned around and walked back. It was already late at night. Little Miss Xing suddenly thought that Xiaoqian might be cultivating with a few women. It wasn't convenient for her to barge in, so she walked back halfway. She dispelled this thought. In any case, she had been spending most of her time with Xiaoqian, so there would be plenty of opportunities to talk about it. Just as the preparations for the Exalt Secret Realm were in full swing, the Immortal Cultivation Faction and the Ghost Cultivation Faction weren't idle either. They each sent out a large number of people to search for women with spiritual chi in the mortal world, the outer martial world, and even the inner martial world. However, although their goals were the same, the methods used by the two factions were poles apart. The Immortal Cultivation Faction was relatively more civilized. If they found a suitable candidate, they would usually invite them to the inner martial world Song clan as a guest. Then they would try to persuade them with emotion and reason, hoping that they would agree. Some people felt that the Immortal Cultivation Faction was generous and had an optimistic attitude towards the uncertainties of the sacrificial ceremony, so they gladly accepted. However, for the sake of their own lives, most of them chose to refuse. The Immortal Cultivation Faction didn't force them and instead sent them away. As for the Ghost Cultivation Faction, they were much more barbaric. They would cast a net to catch people. As long as they found a suitable candidate, they wouldn't care if the other party was willing or not. In short, they would capture them and detain them. Then they would threaten and bribe them, using all kinds of methods to force the other party to submit. Therefore, the Ghost Cultivation Faction was a bit more effective than the Immortal Cultivation Faction. In the mortal world Song Ning City, Hongzhu was resting in Li Xiener's home. After a rough calculation, Hongzhu realized that he had already been in the mortal world for more than a week. In this week he had practically run through the entire Songning city. However, apart from Lu Shuangshuang, he hadn't met anyone else suitable. Hongzhu couldn't help but wonder, was his luck really that bad? Did he really have to go to the sacrificial ceremony himself? Sister Hongzhu, that Lu Shuangshuang hasn't contacted us since we last met. She didn't even go to the Warriors Guild to sell her binoculars. Could there be a problem? Li Xianer was cooking in the kitchen when she suddenly thought of Lu Shuangshuang. It can't be, right? I think she might not want to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, but she's too embarrassed to say it out loud. So, she simply hasn't contacted us. Hongzhu leaned on the sofa, curled his lips and said helplessly, actually this is very normal. Put yourself in her shoes and think about it. If it was me, I also wouldn't be willing to use my own life as the price in exchange for illusory benefits. This transaction is obviously not worth it. But in my opinion, Lu Shuangshuang doesn't seem like the kind of person who starts strong but ends weak. If she doesn't agree. Li Xianer shook her head and said as she walked out of the kitchen with a plate of stir-fried vegetables. Chapter 1185. Ring ring ring. Before Li Xianer could finish speaking, Hongzhu's cell phone on the table suddenly rang. Putting down the plate, Li Xianer looked down at the phone and said with a smile, "See, I told you she would call. Big sister Hongzhu, pick up and listen." Hongzhu was stunned for a moment. He casually took the phone and found that it was Lu Shuangshuang's name displayed on the screen. He was delighted and quickly pressed the answer button. He put the phone to his ear, and before Hongzhu could speak, a weak female voice came from the other end of the line. Excuse me, are you Lu Shuangshuang's friend, Miss Hong? Hongzhu? That's right, I'm Hongzhu. May I ask who you are? Hongzhu was a little puzzled. This didn't seem to be Lu Shuangshuang's voice. What happened? Was Lu Shuangshuang sick? Hello, I'm Lu Shuangshuang's best friend, Kerlin. Kerlin held the phone and bit her lower lip as she said timidly, I'm looking for you to ask about Shuangshuang's whereabouts. May I ask, have you seen her recently? Recently? The last time I saw her was about a week ago. What happened? Did something happen to her? Hongzhu asked anxiously. He felt that something was wrong the more he listened. She hasn't been home for 5 or 6 days and she didn't take her phone with her. Kerlin gathered her courage and described in detail, her grandmother thought that she was playing at my house so she didn't pay much attention. It wasn't until I came to look for her today that I realized she was missing. I took the liberty of calling you because I left your business card on the table. How could this be? Where are you now? I'll rush over to find you immediately. We'll talk about the details when we meet. Hongzhu suddenly stood up. He couldn't care less about eating and ran out with the phone in one hand and Li Xianer in the other. On the other end of the phone, Kerlin's cautious voice came through. I live in Shantytown XX in the west of the city. Before Kerlin could finish speaking, Hongzhu had already flagged down a taxi. After telling the driver the address, she said to Kerlin on the phone, I'm already in the car. Don't leave yet. If there's anything, wait for me. After that, Hongzhu hung up the phone, took out 100 yuan from his wallet, and handed it to the driver, telling him to get to Shantytown as soon as possible. The driver was also puzzled. These two girls didn't look like poor people from the way they dressed. Why would he go to a poor place like Shantytown? Could it be to experience life? However, seeing how generous Hongzhu was, the driver did not intend to ask any more questions. After receiving the money, he stepped on the accelerator and sped toward the Shantytown. Not long after, the taxi stopped near the slums. Hongzhu and Li Xianer had never been here before, so they had no choice but to follow the house numbers one by one. But what astonished Hongzhu was that the closer she got to Lu Shuangshuang's house, the more she had a strong feeling that there was actually a woman with weak spiritual energy hiding nearby. Excuse me, are you Miss Hongzhu? Just as Hongzhu was concentrating on the house number, a beautiful, gentle and weak little girl came over and greeted Hongzhu softly. I am. You're Lin Kuo, right? Hongzhu turned his head, carefully glanced at Lin Kuo, and said in an indifferent voice. At this time, she had discovered that the weak spiritual energy she had felt before was emitted from Kerlin. Yes, Miss Hongzhu, is this your friend? Kerlin nodded obediently and glanced at Li Xianer standing next to her. Yes, her name is Li Xianer and she's my good, best friend. You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Hongzhu. Xianer and I are ordinary people, not the daughters of some big family. Hongzhu replied with a smile. I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it, please don't misunderstand. Only then did Kerlin realize that miss was actually a very ambiguous word. Her face immediately turned red and she regretted being too rash. This big sister in front of her had a hot body and enchanting eyes. Would she mind this? It's alright, it's not something important. Hongzhu casually waved her hand. She could see that Kerlin's eyes were very clear and she was probably still inexperienced. Although she had called her miss, it was probably just out of courtesy. She didn't mind it that much. Kerlin let out a light sigh of relief. She rubbed the corner of her clothes and said apologetically, I'm sorry. I lost the house number to Shuang's house. I was worried that you might not be able to find this place, so I specially came out to get you, the two of you. The house number here is a little hard to find. Hongzhu sized up Kerlin a few more times, feeling a little surprised. However, she didn't expose her. Instead, she calmly said, let's talk about Lu Shuang. Before she disappeared, did she contact anyone? I looked through her phone just now. Because her last call was to you, I took the liberty to call you to ask. Kerlin lowered her head and took out Lu Shuang's phone. She handed it over and pointed at the call log. She called me? Hongzhu took the phone with an astonished look on his face and muttered, she didn't call me before. What's going on? Hongzhu, who was full of doubts, looked through the call log on Lu Shuang's phone. Aside from a call from Kerlin, Lu Shuang had also called him a few days ago. Looking at the date of the call, it should be the night after he met her. This is too strange. I clearly didn't receive Lu Shuang's call that day, so why is my number on the call log? Hongzhu frowned and took out his phone to check again. Sure enough, Lu Shuang's call log from that day didn't show up. He definitely didn't miss it. Sister Hongzhu, could it be that at that time, Lu Shuang had already made up her mind on that matter and wanted to give you a call, but something urgent cropped up at the last minute, so she hung up before the call could go through? That's why there's this record? Li Xianer thought for a while and analyzed softly. That's the only possibility. Hongzhu thought for a while, then turned to Kerlin and asked, who does Lu Shuang usually live with? Shuang usually lives with her grandmother. She's very filial and takes good care of her grandmother. Kerlin was a little nervous and stuttered. Then who was the last person to see her? Did that person notice anything out of the ordinary? Hongzhu continued to ask. Chapter 1186. Actually, I don't know much about her circle. She rarely talks about her personal affairs. Kerlin shook her head. She suddenly thought of something and continued, but when I asked Grandma, she mentioned that on the night Shuang disappeared, she vaguely heard a girl calling her name outside the house. Girl? Who was it? Did you see her face? What kind of person is she? Hongzhu immediately grasped the key point. Unfortunately, Kerlin shook her head and said with a guilty expression, I didn't see it. Grandma thought it was me, so she didn't pay much attention. She's old and she can't see people clearly. Kerlin was now very upset. Although she was Lu Shuang's best friend, she had to help set up the stall at home besides going to school every day. She rarely had the chance to see Lu Shuang. No matter how he thought about it, other than knowing that Shuang was selling binoculars at the Warrior Guild, he knew nothing else. He felt that he was not qualified to be her best friend. Could it be that Lu Shuang was kidnapped? I saw a Weibo post a while ago, saying that some people use the cries of children and women to commit crimes at night when the sky is dark. They've already succeeded in a few cases. What a scum. Li Xianer stomped her feet angrily and muttered to herself. She had finally found a girl with spiritual energy, but she didn't expect such an accident to happen. Li Xianer wanted to shout at the sky to vent the frustration in her heart. Kidnap. Kerlin pursed her lips and almost cried. She said with a terrified expression, Then what should we do? Should we call the police? Kerlin couldn't understand. What was the point of kidnapping Lu Shuang? She had no money or power like herself. Could it be that the other party was a rapist? So scary. Shuang would be fine, right? Don't worry. Calling the police won't solve the problem now. Lu Shuang might have just gone to another friend's house. How about this, you go back first? Xianer and I are quite capable. We'll definitely find her. Hongzhu hurriedly comforted Kerlin. While comforting her, Hongzhu couldn't help but roll his eyes at Li Xianer. This girl's mouth was too chatty. Why did she have to mention kidnapping? Look at how scared this little girl is. All right then. With a pale face, Kerlin looked at Hongzhu hopefully and said, If you find Shuang, can you please give me a call? I'm worried that something will happen to her. Kerlin also understood that there were some things that the police might not be able to handle. After all, Lu Shuangshuang had been missing for so many days. She was afraid that the golden time for rescue had long passed. Now, she could only hope that these two sisters in front of her with strong auras could find Shuangshuang. Good, then tell me your mobile number. When I find her, I'll inform you immediately. Hongzhu nodded and took out his mobile phone, preparing to record Kerlin's number. But I don't have a mobile phone. Kerlin stammered for a long time with a pitiful expression on her face. With her family's financial situation, how could she afford a mobile phone? Then take Lu Shuangshuang's mobile phone with you. Remember to charge it at all times and keep it connected. I can call you. Maybe she'll also call. Hongzhu was startled for a moment, then he handed Lu Shuangshuang's mobile phone over. Looking at Kerlin's thin figure and plain clothes, Hongzhu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It seemed that Kerlin's family situation was very ordinary. Nowadays, which girl of her age didn't have a smartphone? No wonder she could only live in this dirty and dilapidated shantytown. If there's nothing else, I'll go home first. I'll leave Shuangshuang in your hands. Kerlin took the mobile phone and carefully put it away. Then she turned around and left with her head lowered. No one knew what she was thinking, but she almost bumped into a telephone pole on the side of the road. Looking at Kerlin's dazed back, Hongzhu gave Li Xianer a look. Then he used his movement technique and quietly followed Kerlin until he saw her enter a low bungalow. After ascertaining the location of her house, he stopped not far away. After being glared at by Hongzhu just now, Li Xianer didn't dare to speak carelessly along the way and obediently followed them. Seeing that Hongzhu had no intention of leaving, she asked in a low voice, "Big sis Hongzhu, why did you come back with Kerlin? Shouldn't we go find Lu Shuangshuang first?" "Naturally, I have my reasons." Hongzhu stared at the low and messy bungalow and explained in a low voice, "This Kerlin is also a suitable candidate. Moreover, she was born with a mysterious Yin constitution, which can increase the success rate of the sacrificial ceremony. However, I don't know why, but the spiritual energy in her body is being suppressed by a powerful murderous aura. She can't use it, so I wanted to come and take a look." When he met Kerlin before, Hongzhu had already noticed this problem, but he had kept it to himself. Looking at Kerlin's appearance, she probably didn't know what was wrong with her constitution. Originally, when Hongzhu was chatting with Kerlin, he wanted to tell her the ins and outs of the matter and convince her to participate in the sacrificial ceremony. However, considering Lu Shuangshuang's sudden disappearance, Hongzhu was worried that this might affect Lin Ke's judgment. Furthermore, this little lass looked weak and timid and was rather cautious. She probably wouldn't easily trust someone she had just met for the first time. So, after thinking about it, Hongzhu decided to temporarily give up on this idea. He decided to observe for a while and also find Lu Shuangshuang's whereabouts. It can't be, right? Such a coincidence? Li Xianer was a little surprised and asked, "But what did you mean by her murderous aura just now?" But to put it simply, she's a big jinx. No matter who comes into contact with her, they'll be out of luck for a while. Hongzhu shook his head and said, "Unless that person has a strong ability to resist the murderous aura, or as the saying goes, a tough life, they won't be affected by the murderous aura." In fact, Hongzhu wasn't very clear about the specifics of the murderous aura. He had only vaguely seen a black aura shrouding the space between Kerlin's eyebrows, so he was able to deduce it from the knowledge he already had. "Ah, is that true? I think we also came into contact with her just now. Will we be out of luck as well?" Li Xianer's shoulders suddenly slumped as if she was deflated. She sighed helplessly and said, "However, it seems that we're already starting to run out of luck. Otherwise, Lu Shuangshuang wouldn't have mysteriously disappeared. That's not because of her. When I said that I came into contact with her, I meant the more intimate kind. If it was just ordinary communication, she wouldn't have been." Before Hongzhu could finish speaking, he suddenly felt the phone in his pocket vibrate a few times. He quickly took it out and looked at it. A strange expression instantly appeared on his face. Chapter 1187. Looking at the two big words Hong Yen on the screen, Hongzhu hesitated for a moment before pressing the answer button. He walked to the side and lightly said, "Hong Yen, what's the matter?" "Well, Hongzhu, is everything going well on your side? I've encountered a small situation here." Hong Yan's tone was also very flat. Although her voice was soft, it didn't have the slightest emotion. It sounded like she was talking to a stranger. "It's not bad. I found two women with spiritual energy. What happened on your side? You couldn't have messed up the mission, right? Hong Zhu curled his lips and teased with a grin. I don't want to quarrel with you. I'm just calling to remind you to keep an eye on the women you've found. 2 of my people have gone missing. I speculate that it might be the work of the ghost cultivation sect. Hong Yan didn't respond and coldly said, What? 2 people have gone missing? Hong Zhu frowned and finally realized the seriousness of the problem. He put away the smile on his face and said in a heavy voice, I also have 1 missing. According to what you said, it should also be the work of the ghost cultivation sect. It seems that our situation is the same. The ghost cultivation sect is really fast. Hong Yan's heart sank as she muttered. But, how can they still have people in the secular world? Hong Zhu pondered for a moment and said with a puzzled expression, If I remember correctly, weren't they cleaned up by the Song family? Song Qingshu also thought so at that time. But it turns out that there are still disciples of the ghost cultivation sect in the secular world. Hong Yan slightly sighed and said, And not only in the secular world but also in the outer martial world. I've found 2 women in Tianfang province and the Devil Star sect with great difficulty, but now their whereabouts are unknown. Outer martial world? The ghost cultivation sect is really like a centipede, dying but not falling down. We have swept through them time and time again, but we have not been able to exterminate them. Hong Zhu hatefully said. That's the specific situation. Hong Yan warned again, Hong Zhu, you'd better keep an eye on the remaining woman. Don't let them have their way again. I know you don't need to repeatedly remind me, I will naturally do that. Is there anything else? Hong Zhu asked coldly, a little impatient. No one spoke on the other end of the line, but the sound of rapid breathing could be heard. It was obvious that Hong Yan had been angered by Hong Zhu's cold and indifferent attitude. However, Hong Yan quickly calmed down. After pondering for a moment, she calmly said, Elder sister, the immortal cultivation sect has reached a critical juncture. It would be better for you to reconsider and participate in the sacrificial ceremony. Oh, you're finally willing to acknowledge me as your sister? I thought you would never call me sister again in this lifetime. At this moment, Hong Zhu's mood was somewhat complicated. She couldn't tell if she was happy or sad, but she could feel her eyes gradually moistening. Since we are related by blood, I won't deny it. Hong Yan's voice also trembled a little. She took a deep breath and changed the topic. Sister, think about it carefully. If the ghost cultivation sect is 1 step ahead of us and enters the immortal cultivation world, I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable. Hong Zhu's emotions were stuck in his throat and he didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, his expression gradually turned cold. He clenched his teeth and sneered. In the end, you're still only thinking about the interests of the family. Elder sister. Hong Yan had just called out when Hong Zhu ruthlessly said, I admit that I'm not as great as you. Since there are others who can replace me, why must I be the sacrifice? Elder sister, you don't need to mock and ridicule me. I'm not as great as you say. Hong Yan's voice also became agitated. In any case, we were born in such a family and can't decide our own fate, so why should we make things difficult for others? Make things difficult? Did we burn, kill, plunder, rob, or threaten others? Hong Zhu immediately retorted. We only let others participate in the sacrificial ceremony when they are willing. How is this making things difficult? This is called taking what we need. But this is only our family's matter. Isn't it a little too cruel to let a few innocent outsiders bear this responsibility? Hong Yan's tone was somewhat angry. My dear younger sister, you've used the wrong word again. Where does cruelty come from? Hong Zhu sneered. Not to mention that the sacrificial ceremony might not necessarily cost their lives, we've already given them enough in return. This is purely a transaction. But under the current circumstances, do you still have time to slowly make a transaction with others? Hong Yan was also a little unable to suppress her emotions. She angrily said, If the ghost cultivation sect enters the immortal cultivation world in advance, have you ever thought about how much harm it will cause to the common people? The ghost cultivation sect is so morally bankrupt and does all kinds of evil. How much blood will it bring about? It seems that our values are still different. Hong Zhu repeatedly shook his head. Unwilling to be outdone, he retorted, Do you think that the family wants to open the immortal cultivation world just to curb the development of the ghost cultivation sect? If the immortal cultivation sect doesn't want to obtain the resources and strength in the immortal cultivation world, they just need to focus their energy on the ghost cultivation sect and do their best to eliminate them in advance. Why do they still need to spend so much manpower and resources to enter the immortal cultivation world? This is the fate of the family. Since we're juniors, we naturally have no right to ask or resist. You should know that. Hong Yan replied as if it was a matter of course. Before Hong Yan could finish speaking, Hong Zhu became angry and impatiently interrupted. Enough! You don't need to use the family's way to educate me. In short, I'm not willing to exchange my life for the interests of that family. That's it. As soon as his voice faded, Hong Zhu directly hung up the phone and his complexion turned very unsightly. Every time he talked to his obedient little sister on the phone, it would always end up as if they were quarreling. Although the two of them didn't have any substantial conflicts, they couldn't coexist in some aspects. This made Hong Zhu very unhappy, so he usually wouldn't take the initiative to contact Hong Yan. In the eyes of everyone in the Hong family, Hong Yan was always that gentle and obedient girl. No matter what kind of mission the family gave her, she would carry it out without any hesitation. Even when it came to risking her life to become a sacrifice, Hong Yan had never said a single word of objection. Although they were sisters, Hong Zhu's personality was worlds apart from Hong Yan's. In the eyes of the family, she was synonymous with rebellious. Ever since she was young, Hong Zhu had disregarded the Hong family's objections and insisted on learning the art of charm. She had even caused a huge ruckus in the family, refusing to become a sacrifice for opening the immortal cultivation world no matter what. She would rather sneak into the secular world or the martial world and rely on her own strength to find other suitable candidates. Chapter 1188. The members of the family had originally been very angry at Hong Zhu's disregard for the bigger picture, but they had not expected that after reporting it to the patriarch, not only would he not stop her, he would even encourage Hong Zhu's actions. Not only did the patriarch verbally encourage her, he had even specially invited Song Qingshu of the Song family to go to the secular world to help take care of the evil cultivator disciples. Moreover, he had established a Hong Ying team specifically for Hong Zhu to protect her and gather information. Although it was said that the clan's interests were above all else, Hong Zhu had already proposed a solution. Since she did not want to become a sacrifice herself, as long as she could use the appropriate method to find a suitable candidate who could take her place, Patriarch Hong would not have any complaints against her. The actions of the old patriarch caused the Hong family members to change their attitude towards Hong Zhu. Normally they would treat her with more respect. However, there was still one person, and that was her younger sister, Hong Yan, who still strongly disapproved of her actions. Hong Yan believed that since Hong Zhu was the successor of an immortal cultivation sect, she must have a sense of duty to sacrifice herself for the family. She had not expected that not only would Hong Zhu find an outsider to replace her position, she would even learn some heretical art of seduction. This was simply a disgrace to the Hong family. However, although she disapproved of Hong Zhu's actions, the two of them had grown up together and shared a deep and intimate relationship. Hong Yan's trust and dependence on Hong Zhu had not diminished because of this. The real reason why the two women were so incompatible and at odds with each other was actually because of Xiao Chen. Previously, when Hong Yan had helped out at the pharmacy, it was all because of Xiao Chen's careless words that she had thought that Xiao Chen was a lecher and a pervert. Moreover, because Hong Yan had never mentioned this little secret to anyone else, every time she recalled this matter, her impression of Xiao Chen would become even worse. In the end, when Hong Yan was not around in order to investigate Xiao Chen's strength, Hong Zhu had not hesitated to use a seduction art to seduce him. When Hong Yan found out about this, her impression of her older sister became extremely bad, as if she had swallowed a fly. Because of this insignificant matter, the two sisters grew increasingly disagreeable, and the conflict between them grew more and more intense. In the end, the two women had a huge argument in front of the elders of the family. Although Hong Yan and Hong Zhu had been pacified at the time, the relationship between Hong Yan and Hong Zhu had gradually drifted apart after that, and their interactions had become less and less frequent. Hong Zhu stared at her phone and sighed softly. In truth, why would she and Hong Yan have such a deep grudge against each other? The two of them were connected by blood and should have been the most intimate of relationships. Who would have thought that it would turn out like this? Cough cough that. Sister Hong Zhu, it's getting dark, what are we waiting for here? Seeing that Hong Zhu had finished his call, Li Xian pretended to look up at the sky and pretended to cough twice. Although Hong Zhu had already walked some distance away, a few words still fell into Li Xian's ear. Li Xian was indeed a little curious as to why Hong Zhu and her sisters would have such an unpleasant quarrel, but she did not dare to ask too many questions. After all, this was a family matter, and it was not appropriate for outsiders to get involved. As such, she could only change the subject. Hong Zhu regained his composure and said with a solemn expression, "I just received news that the ghost cultivation sect is also competing with us for women with spiritual energy in the secular world. It is very likely that Lu Shuangshuang was captured by them." "What? The ghost cultivation sect?" Li Xianer was shocked. After pondering for a while, she looked at the bungalow and said, "Since that's the case, shouldn't we speed up? How about we go and ask that Kerlin now and see if she's willing to become a sacrifice? Looking at the situation here, I feel that her family shouldn't be very well off. As long as we spend a bit more money, I think she will definitely agree." Not for the time being. Hong Zhu had already returned to normal at this time. He stared at Kerlin's residence and said, "There's something strange about this matter. If we rashly go in, not only will Kerlin not believe our words, she will also suspect that we were the ones who kidnapped Lu Shuangshuang. Then what should we do? If we don't act now, it will be too late when the ghost cultivation sect comes looking for us." Li Xianer asked with a frown. "That's exactly what we want." Hong Zhu raised his eyebrows and coldly said, "If Lu Shuangshuang was really kidnapped by the ghost cultivation sect, that means that Kerlin is also in danger. Therefore, I plan to stay here for a few days and see who the other party is. If everything goes smoothly, we can also use this opportunity to rescue Lu Shuangshuang." Li Xianer excitedly waved her small fist and said, "That's great. I've long wanted to teach those despicable ghost cultivation sect a lesson, but I've never had the chance to meet them." Halfway through her words, Li Xianer's stomach issued a goo-goo sound. She hastily covered her stomach in embarrassment. Only then did she remember that she hadn't had the time to finish her meal when Kerlin called her to come here. I'm also a bit hungry. You stay here and keep an eye on them. I'll go out and buy something to eat." Hong Zhu faintly smiled and stretched his waist in a charming manner. He glanced around and then walked towards the convenience store at the entrance of the slum area. Late at night, most of the households in the slum area had already turned off their lights and slept. Only a few houses still had a faint light on, and one of them was Kerlin's room. Originally, Kerlin wouldn't sleep so late, but she was now a freshman. In addition to attending classes on time during the day, she also had to help her family set up the stall in her spare time. It was inevitable that she couldn't keep up with the progress of her studies. She didn't want to fall behind others, so she took advantage of the night to revise for a while. After earnestly doing a few exercises, Kerlin raised her head and looked at the time. Seeing that it was almost 12 o'clock, she closed her textbook and went out to take a bath. When she returned to her room and was about to turn off the light to sleep, she suddenly saw a black shadow flashing outside the window. Who is it? Kerlin was suddenly shocked. She had heard that several households in the slum area had been robbed recently. According to the investigation, the thieves had quietly sneaked in through the windows in the middle of the night after the people in the bungalows had fallen asleep. Since the buildings in slum area were basically bungalows, and Kerlin's house was on the first floor, and the windows of her house had an old-fashioned lock that had been used for decades. Now, it was dilapidated so they could only use a bolt. So, once a thief targeted her, it was easy for them to enter the room. It's Shuangshuang. You haven't slept yet, right? Hurry up and open the window. I'm in trouble. Kerlin had just plucked up the courage to ask when Lu Shuangshuang's voice came from outside the window. It sounded a little hoarse. "Shuangshuang? It's you? Where did you go? Your grandmother and I were worried to death." Kerlin was delighted and quickly ran over. Just as she was about to open the window, her hand suddenly paused. Chapter 1189. What's wrong? Open the window for me. Lu Shuangshuang saw Kerlin's silhouette standing in front of the window, so she quickly reached out and knocked on the window. Kerlin quickly retracted her hand that was about to open the window. She whispered cautiously, I can't open the window for you yet. Unless you answer a few questions of mine and let me confirm your identity." What kind of joke is this? I am the real Lu Shuangshuang. Can't you open the window now? I really have something important to discuss with you." Lu Shuangshuang's silhouette paced back and forth outside the window. She was clearly getting impatient. "No. Unless you can answer my questions correctly, I will never open the window." Lu Shuangshuang's abnormal behavior deepened the doubt in Kerlin's heart. She immediately asked, "Shuangshuang, let me ask you, when did we meet?" "We were... Don't come near me. Ker, save me." Lu Shuangshuang let out a scream of fear before she could answer the question. Hearing Lu Shuangshuang scream, Kerlin was shocked. She looked out the window and saw a few more silhouettes. They seemed to be pulling Lu Shuangshuang. Kerlin was dumbfounded. She couldn't care less and quickly reached out to open the latch. But when she opened the window a little, a wisp of black fog that was hard to see with the naked eye quietly floated in through the gap. "Hehe, I didn't think you were so smart. You're much harder to fool than that little girl Lu Shuangshuang." A wretched voice rang out. Kerlin felt the window being pushed with great force. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. The black figure outside the window directly pushed open the window and jumped into the room. "You're not Lu Shuangshuang." Kerlin saw the black figure and was about to shout for help. Suddenly she felt her brain go dizzy. Then she lost all her strength and fell to the ground. Before she fainted, Lin Ke saw an incomparably ugly man. His body was constantly emitting a black fog, and he was slowly walking towards her with complacent steps. "Tsk, little girl, you're quite pretty. It's a pity that master doesn't allow me to touch you. Otherwise I'll let you have a good taste of what it's like to die." The vulgar man stared greedily at Kerlin's exquisite body. He unconsciously stuck out his tongue and licked his lips with a lecherous look. "Stupid girl. Why are you quarreling in the middle of the night? Hurry up and go to sleep. Did you forget that you still have class tomorrow?" Outside the room, Kerlin's mother walked over in a daze, knocked on the door and asked loudly with dissatisfaction. The vulgar man furrowed his brows. He felt that he shouldn't stay here for long. It would be troublesome if he was discovered. He made a prompt decision, picked up the unconscious Kerlin, and jumped out of the window in a flash, disappearing into the boundless night. Bang. Seeing that Kerlin didn't respond for a long time, Lin's mother vigorously pushed the door open, but what she saw was only a gradually dissipating black mist, an empty room and 2 swaying open windows. Her daughter was nowhere to be seen. "Not good. Old man, don't sleep, our air is gone." After standing there in a daze for a long time, Mother Lin finally reacted. She immediately turned pale with fright and ran to her room while screaming. Carrying Kerlin on his back, he quickly shuttled through the shanty town. The vulgar man didn't seem to feel her weight at all. He ran a few kilometers effortlessly, and looked back from time to time to see if anyone would follow him. It wasn't until the vulgar man entered a dense forest that he felt that no one should be following him that he slowed down and continued to walk forward leisurely. After walking for another 10 minutes, the vulgar man came to the front of 2 broken wooden houses. He first pushed open the door of one of the wooden houses, shut Kerlin in and carefully locked her with a chain. After confirming that everything was fine, he tiptoed out of the wooden house. "You damn lecher, you run quite fast. If it weren't for my strength, I'm afraid that you would have succeeded today." The vulgar man had just stepped out of the door when he heard a charming voice suddenly ring out, and he was suddenly shocked. Looking up, the vulgar man found that under the moonlight not far away, there were 2 beautiful women standing in the dense forest, staring at him. The vulgar man's eyes immediately lit up. These 2 women were both stunners. Moreover, they each had their own merits. One of them was dressed like a Taoist nun, and she had an air of arrogance. Although she looked very young, her figure was exquisite, and she had an awe-inspiring and inviolable temperament. And the other one should be the woman who had just spoken to him. This woman's temperament was a notch higher than the one beside her. Her eyes were coquettish, her figure was curvy, and her skin was fair. Although she looked like she had been through a lot, she was extremely attractive, and people couldn't help but want to love her. With the moonlight sprinkling down from the top of the forest, the 2 women's faces were even more beautiful. The vulgar man stared straight at the 2 women's delicate bodies, and he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. "What are you looking at? Damn lecher. Believe it or not, I'll dig out your eyeballs and throw them to the side of the road to feed the dogs." Li Xianer's long, shapely eyebrows raised and she angrily scolded. The vulgar man's eyes kept going back and forth between her and Hong Zhu, and he even glanced at some private parts of their bodies. His greedy and lustful gaze made Li Xianer feel very uncomfortable. Previously, Li Xianer and Hong Zhu had been squatting outside Kerlin's house in the slums, and they had witnessed the vulgar man taking Kerlin away. Li Xianer had wanted to immediately come to her rescue, but she was stopped by Hong Zhu in time. The whole process of this guy using Lu Shuangshuang as a cover to deceive Kerlin was heard by Hong Zhu without missing a word. She immediately deduced that Lu Shuangshuang should have also been taken away by this vulgar man. Therefore she didn't immediately make a move but quietly followed him. She wanted to use this opportunity to find the melon by following the vine and rescue Lu Shuangshuang as well. Fortunately, Li Xian was also a cultivator, and she could release her divine sense. She followed the vulgar man from afar so he didn't notice her. When they saw him enter the wooden house and settle Kerlin down, the two women looked at each other and felt that the time had come. They no longer hid and both stood out. Yo, this chick's temper is quite fierce. But it doesn't matter, I like to tame wild horses the most. Sunabayo didn't care about Li Xian'er's scolding at all. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. I've heard too much of your mouth. Hongzhu curled her lips and sneered, don't just stand there and enjoy yourself. If you have the ability, why don't you come over and try taming her? Chapter 1190. If you want to come, I, Sunabayo, have many tricks up my sleeves. I guarantee that your soul will soar to the heavens. Sunabayo slowly walked over, rubbing his palms together as he looked at the two of them, salivating as he muttered, Haha, I didn't think that my luck would be so good today. There are actually two such exquisite goods that have delivered themselves to my doorstep. Shameless. Despicable. Scum. Li Xian'er looked at Sunabayo with disgust as she mercilessly insulted him. Thank you for your praise. Sunabayo shamelessly licked his lips, then suddenly froze for a moment. He narrowed his eyes as he carefully examined Hongzhu, a happy expression appearing on his face as he said, I didn't think that your body would also have spiritual energy. Wah, it seems that today's trip was really worth it. So you also have this kind of ability, no wonder you were able to find Lu Shuangshuang and Kerlin. Hongzhu finally understood the reason and coldly said, but everything ends here. Don't even think about taking them away alive. So you've finally told me your goal? Sunabayo didn't seem surprised at all and instead smiled wickedly. Unfortunately, I don't want to stop here, I still want to have some fun with you beauties. Hongzhu saw that Sunabayo seemed to be on guard and inwardly cursed. She immediately activated her cultivation technique and displayed the strength of a peak 5th layer demon general, the corners of her mouth curling up as she suddenly revealed a soul-stirring smile. Sunabayo didn't even have time to react before he saw Hongzhu's enchanting smile. His eyes immediately stared blankly, feeling as if the entire world had brightened because of her smile. Hongzhu's cherry lips parted slightly as she said in an extremely seductive voice, Little foolish K, don't you think elder sister is beautiful? Come and play with elder sister for a while. Li Xian'er was standing next to Hongzhu, so she didn't see her smile, but when she heard Hongzhu's voice she couldn't help but feel her heart flutter. Even though Hongzhu's voice wasn't directed at her, Li Xian'er was still nearly unable to bear the aftershock. If the others were already in such a state, Sunabayo, who was directly facing Hongzhu, was even more unbearable. His expression was absent-minded and a certain part of his body was about to explode as he spread his arms wide towards Hongzhu and leapt towards her with soulless eyes, muttering, All right. I'm coming over. Sister, wait for me. When Li Xian'er heard Sunabayo's voice that sounded like a broken gong, she suddenly quivered and sobered up. She turned her head around and shot a surprised look at Hongzhu. She was still puzzled, wondering what was going on with Hongzhu. Why was he acting up for no reason? At this moment, Li Xian'er couldn't care less anymore. She whispered, Sister Hongzhu, there's no need to talk so much with him. Just let me chop this scum to death with my palm. Hearing Li Xian'er's words, Hongzhu's expression did not change. He continued to stare at Sunabayo, but his finger moved slightly and he lightly pointed at Li Xian'er. Seeing Hongzhu's strange behavior, Li Xian'er was slightly taken aback. She suddenly realized that Hongzhu was not fooling around with her, but was using a charm technique. And she pointed at him, indicating for him to attack with all his strength. Li Xian'er immediately turned her head and saw that Sunabayo was completely captivated and defenseless. She knew that this was the best time for her to attack, so she revealed the strength of the peak of level 9 of the Qi refinement stage. Then, she flew towards Sunabayo and attacked him with all her strength. Boom! Li Xian'er's palm wind slapped Sunabayo's body firmly, sending him flying backward and directly smashing into the wooden house not far behind him, making a loud crackling sound. This kind of trash scum can't even withstand a single blow. With just this bit of ability he still has the nerve to come out and make a fool of himself? Li Xian'er said disdainfully as she folded her arms across her chest. After waiting for a while and seeing that there was no movement from the wooden house, Li Xian'er took a step forward and prepared to go to another wooden house to save the others. However, she had only taken one step when she was pulled back by Hongzhu. Wait, he's still alive. Hongzhu pointed at the wooden house with a solemn expression. Li Xian'er turned her head and saw that although no one had come out of the house, a black mist was gradually spreading out from the house. Seeing this, Li Xian'er couldn't help but frown. Before she could release her divine sense to investigate the situation inside the house, the black mist suddenly and rapidly expanded, instantly enveloping the entire small wooden house. The color of the black mist was extremely dark, making it impossible to see what was happening inside the wooden house. After a while, a blurry figure slowly emerged from the black mist. The two women were inwardly shocked as they focused all of their attention and vigilance. It didn't take long before the figure revealed its true appearance. It was Sunabayo, who had an extremely furious expression on his face. The strange black mist behind Sunabayo rapidly shrank as it continuously surged into Sunabayo's body. It didn't take long for all the black mist in the wooden house to be absorbed into Sunabayo's body. In addition to this, there was also some extremely dark black mist swirling around Sunabayo's body, making him look extremely sinister and terrifying. "You two stinking bitches. You actually dared to use such a despicable trick to sneak attack me, just watch how I kill you." Sunabayo was clearly enraged. With a furious roar, the black mist around his body began to squirm as if it had a mind of its own. Hongzhu's expression was very serious. It was obvious that he was somewhat fearful of Sunabayo's abilities. However, Sunabayo did not wait for the two women to react. He instantly pushed the black mist around his body to its limit, opened his palms and pounced forward like a bat. As he pounced forward with a sinister expression, Sunabayo shouted in a low voice, "Flower-destroying demon palm. Li Xian'er, get out of the way. We're no match for him." Hongzhu immediately turned pale with fright. Although this Sunabayo looked extremely ugly and only had the cultivation of a fifth-layer evil general, the power that he exuded was far higher than that of an ordinary cultivator. Evil cultivators were extremely unscrupulous in their cultivation methods. For example, they would use the fresh blood of someone who had just died to cultivate, or they would use corpse poison and corpse chi to cultivate, and so on. It was precisely because they were unscrupulous in their cultivation that they would not hesitate to harm ordinary people. As a result, the abilities that they cultivated were also extremely sinister. Ordinary cultivators of the same level or even slightly higher cultivation levels would not be able to withstand their attacks. Even though evil cultivators were existences that everyone wanted to kill, it was precisely because of the treacherous nature of their martial arts and mental cultivation methods that they were able to succeed time and time again when facing ordinary cultivators. Furthermore, Sunabayo cultivated the latrine poison, which was extremely corrosive. An ordinary person would not be able to withstand it at all. After Hongzhu gave a loud roar, he reflexively dodged to the side, barely dodging the black mist. Then he immediately turned his head to look at Li Xian'er. Unfortunately, Li Xian'er was not so lucky. Although she had already heard Hongzhu's warning, she was still unable to dodge in time, and her right leg was directly struck by the black mist. Chapter 1191. It hurts. Li Xian'er cried out in alarm. The moment the black mist swept past her, the pants on her right leg had been corroded into nothingness. Her calf was a bloody mess and the wound was extremely deep. The toxicity of this black mist was simply too powerful. If Li Xian'er had not immediately used her yuan qi to protect her body after hearing Hongzhu's words, her right leg would probably have been crippled by now. Haha, now you know pain? Weren't you pretty awesome when you attacked me just now? Sunabayo arrogantly raised his chin and looked disdainfully at the deathly pale Li Xian'er and Hongzhu. Tsk, and you say I'm scum that I can't withstand a single blow? I don't think you two are any better. Cut the crap. You actually used such a vicious move, you must have harmed many ordinary people. Of course you're scum. You're dust that can't even be considered a human. Thus, Li Xian'er gritted her teeth and glared at Sunabayo. Haha, it seems that you have quite a bit of strength. You've even come up with a new way to curse people. Sunabayo sneered, the black mist surrounding his body suddenly thickening. Li Xian'er's complexion paled. She had not expected Sunabayo to still have a trick up his sleeve. Hongzhu's complexion flickered between green and white. His eyes flickered unpredictably as if he was fiercely thinking about something. Sunabayo admired Li Xian'er's flustered appearance with satisfaction. His shifty eyes swept over her exquisite body and he said with a despicable smile, "Little fairy ant, don't be so afraid. If you promise to play with me for a few days, maybe I'll be kind and spare your life. How about it? Play with you my ass. Go to hell." Li Xian'er was instantly enraged. Forcefully enduring the pain in her right leg, she gathered yuan qi in her palms and fiercely slapped at Sunabayo. Yo, I thought that little fairy ant was very powerful. I didn't expect you to only have this much ability? Sunabayo chuckled and stood in place without dodging, allowing Li Xianer's palm wind to strike him. After all, Li Xianer's strength was simply too low. She was unable to cause any harm to Sunabayo. If Sunabayo had not been bewitched by Hongzhu, Li Xianer would not have been able to even get close to him. Seeing that her palm strike with all her strength seemed to have no effect on Sunabayo, Li Xianer's face finally showed an expression of despair. Was she really going to lose her innocence that she had guarded for more than 10 years here today? Xian, think of a way to rescue Kerlin and Lu Shuangshuang. Leave this little fool to me. Hongzhu suddenly said in a deep voice. Li Xianer and Sunabayo both turned their heads to look and saw Hongzhu take out a small porcelain bottle from his bosom. He opened the cork and hesitated for a moment before his expression gradually turned resolute. He raised his head and drank the medicine inside in one gulp. Little slut, you've already started drinking your medicine? Sunabayo winked and teased. But you're right, a strong man like me definitely has some abilities that surpass ordinary people. If you don't use some medicine, I'm afraid you won't be able to stand it after a few rounds. Who knows, you might even cry and beg for mercy. Sunabayo felt that Hongzhu was just too alluring. Even if she was a woman with spiritual energy and was the target of his mission, he still couldn't help but want to go 300 rounds with her. This kind of unparalleled temptation was something he had never felt from any other woman. Originally, Sunabayo's master, Old Man Shishan, knew that Sunabayo's lust was too great and had repeatedly warned Sunabayo that he was not allowed to touch women with spiritual energy. But now that he had seen such a stunningly beautiful woman, Sunabayo couldn't care less. Sunabayo had already made up his mind. In any case, his master had gone on a long journey. After he finished playing with Hongzhu, he would kill that person and erase all traces, pretending that he had never found this person. This way, his master wouldn't be able to find out. Haha, little fool, don't be impatient. You're so tall and mighty, so you should let big sister prepare, right? Hongzhu finished drinking the medicine, threw the small bottle away and charmingly winked at Sunabayo. Since big sister has said so, how could I not agree? Sunabayo looked at Hongzhu, whose eyes and brows were full of charm, and felt his lower abdomen heat up. He licked his lips and said, "When will big sister be ready? I can't wait any longer. If you delay any longer, I can't guarantee that I will punish you." At this time, it had already been a while since she had drunk the medicine. Hongzhu's lips and eyes had gradually turned a pinkish purple, and a faint purple mist was also emitting from her body. She sweetly smiled at Sunabayo, then hooked her finger and said, "Big sister is ready, little fool, hurry up and come over. Even big sister can't help it anymore." Hee, stupid big sister, do you think that this kind of low-level seduction technique will still work on your little brother? Although Sunabayo said this, his lower body still very obediently propped up a small tent. However, Sunabayo still didn't relax his vigilance. While he was fully on guard, he neared Hongzhu with an evil smile on his face. "Little brother, you're walking so slowly. If big sister waits too long, her mood won't be good." Hongzhu saw that Sunabayo's steps were slow and anxious, so she purposely pouted, puffed up her cheeks and acted cute. "What's the rush, big sister? Little brother is coming." Sunabayo finally arrived in front of Hongzhu, his eyes burning with passion as he stretched his hands straight towards her chest. But before Sunabayo's hands could touch Hongzhu's body, the faint purple mist around Hongzhu's body suddenly moved as if it had a mind of its own. It quickly left Hongzhu's body and wrapped around Sunabayo's arms. Before Sunabayo could react, the faint purple mist had already spread over his body, and then it took the opportunity to drill into his nostrils. This is... Sunabayo was instantly dumbfounded. In a panic, he hurriedly mobilized the demonic energy in his body to resist, but he didn't expect that the black mist around his body was completely unable to disperse the faint purple mist. Instead, it was tightly wrapped around his body, unable to resist at all. In truth, Sunabayo's actual combat experience was far too lacking, so he didn't know that the medicine that Hongzhu had taken was an extremely precious strengthening agent that could greatly enhance her seduction technique for a short period of time. Although Hongzhu's strength seemed to still be at the peak of the 5th layer of demonic cultivation, and there was no difference from before, her seduction technique had been raised to a whole new level. If she wanted to control Sunabayo's mind, it would be a simple matter. But from the start, Hongzhu didn't plan on using the medicine to increase her strength. Although this medicine could temporarily enhance her seduction technique, it would also come at a price. it would completely drain the demonic energy in her body. Chapter 1192. The reason for this was very simple. This kind of enhancer was similar to the stimulants used in sports competitions. When taken, it could greatly enhance a person's bodily functions. However, after the efficacy of the drug waned, the person's internal organs would be greatly damaged. Moreover, it was very likely that the person would become addicted to the drug and suffer from incurable side effects. However, the current situation was critical. Hongzhu could not just watch as Sun Abayo violated Li Xian'er, nor could she use her weak strength to control him. After thinking it over, she could only take a risk and use the enhancer to increase the effects of the charm technique in an attempt to buy enough time. The light purple mist quickly invaded Sun Abayo's brain. Sun Abayo, who was still trying to resist, suddenly felt his vision blur. He saw that Hongzhu was wearing a transparent sand-like nightgown, which vividly displayed her curvaceous figure. Moreover, she even struck all kinds of seductive poses and whispered sweet nothings to Sun Abayo, flirting with him, causing him to feel his blood boil. When Sun Abayo saw this, he immediately threw all thoughts of resisting the purple mist to the back of his mind. He quickly took off his clothes and impatiently rushed over, hugged Hongzhu, and let out a low growl from time to time. My God, doesn't this damn scum feel pain? He's actually hugging a piece of wood. Li Xian'er, who was squatting to the side and unable to keep up with the rhythm, was a little dazed as she muttered to herself in extreme shock. At this time, in front of her, the naked Sun Abayo was doing his best to exercise a large piece of wood with an extremely comfortable expression on his face. The impact of this scene was too great. Li Xian'er was so shocked that she almost forgot about the injury on her leg. She hurriedly turned her head away, afraid that she would get a pinprick, completely unable to understand what was going on. But after turning her head around, Li Xian'er suddenly discovered that Hongzhu was standing in the same place with full concentration, motionlessly staring at Sun Abayo. Hongzhu's entire body was wrapped in a pale purple mist, and that mist was constantly drilling into Sun Abayo's nostrils. Li Xian'er was no fool and immediately understood the reason. It seemed that after Hongzhu drank that bottle of medicine, she had once again used her charm technique to control Sun Abayo. This was an opportunity that Hongzhu had fought for with great difficulty. Li Xian'er knew that she could not hesitate and immediately struggled to her feet. Taking advantage of the fact that Sun Abayo had fallen into an illusion and was unaware, she limped towards the wooden house where Kerlin was imprisoned. After all, Hongzhu had never said how long she could control Sun Abayo for. Right now, he could only seize every second and save Kerlin and Lu Shuangshuang as soon as possible. Kerlin. How are you? Wake up. Li Xian'er walked into the wooden hut and came to Kerlin's side. She shouted a few words and shook her body. In the end, Kerlin was still lying there motionless with her eyes closed. She was still unconscious. Li Xian'er furrowed her brows. She did not care too much and quickly used her yuan qi to sever the shackles that bound Lin Ke. With great difficulty, she helped her up and moved her to the outside of the wooden hut to lean against before walking towards the other wooden hut. Shuangshuang, Lu Shuangshuang, where are you? After looking around the other wooden hut for a long time, Li Xian'er could not find any trace of Lu Shuangshuang. The entire wooden hut was only so big and completely empty. Let alone a person, there was not even the shadow of a ghost. Moreover, this wooden hut had been rammed by Sun Abayo before and was already on the verge of collapse. From time to time, it would creak and crack as if it could collapse at any moment. With the situation being so urgent, Li Xian'er did not dare to stay any longer. She released her divine sense and carefully inspected the entire wooden hut. After confirming that there was no one else around, she turned around and limped out. Boom. Not long after Li Xian'er left the wooden hut, the entire hut collapsed with a loud rumble, instantly turning into ruins. Li Xian'er jumped in fright and hurriedly helped Kerlin up. When she turned around, she saw that Hongzhu was still standing in the same spot, her face covered in sweat. The purple mist surrounding her was gradually decreasing, and Sun Abayo was still hugging a log and frantically plowing the land. Enduring the pain in her leg, Li Xian'er walked to Hongzhu's side and whispered, "Big sister Hongzhu, I've already rescued Kerlin, but I couldn't find Lu Shuangshuang even after searching through both huts. I'm guessing that she's already been moved." Hongzhu gave a slight nod and quickly circulated her mental cultivation method, pouring all the purple mist surrounding her into Sun Abayo's body in one go. Then, as if her entire body had collapsed, her legs went soft and she directly sat on the ground. Her lips and eyelids were no longer purple and had returned to their normal color. Big sister Hongzhu. What's wrong? Li Xian'er turned pale with fright. She hastily stretched out her empty hand and tried to help Hongzhu up from the ground. As she supported Hongzhu, Li Xian'er could feel that Hongzhu's body was limp and powerless, as if his entire body had been sucked dry. I'm fine. Let's hurry up and leave this place. My charm technique won't last much longer. Hongzhu weakly waved his hand, took out a restorative pill, stuffed it into his mouth and swallowed it as he panted. All right. Let's go. Li Xian'er did not dare to be negligent. She supported Kerlin with one hand and Hongzhu with the other, enduring the pain in her leg as she staggered along the path they had come from. However, they had only taken a few steps when Li Xian'er suddenly sensed an abnormally evil aura gradually approaching her position. Moreover, that aura was extremely oppressive and was much stronger than Sun Abayo's. Li Xian'er judged that this person should be an extremely high-level evil cultivator expert. If they continued forward, they would definitely run into that evil cultivator expert. Li Xian'er and her group had basically lost all their fighting strength and would definitely not be able to defeat that evil cultivator. However, if they retreated, they would run into that scum Sun Abayo who was diligently plowing the land. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. What should they do? Li Xian'er immediately began to panic. Go that way. Hongzhu forced himself to raise his hand and pointed towards the depths of the forest before he weakly closed his eyes. Li Xian'er stamped her foot, gritted her teeth, and supported the two girls as they turned around and walked deeper into the forest. At the same time, she continued to release her divine sense to observe the movements of that evil cultivator expert, wanting to see if he would chase after them. After walking for an unknown period of time, Li Xian'er could clearly feel that the yuan qi in her body was rapidly depleting due to the continuous release of her divine sense. Fortunately, that evil cultivator expert was not heading in their direction. It seemed that he had yet to discover any traces of them. After walking for a while more, Li Xian'er felt that the vitality in her body was about to be completely exhausted, while Hongzhu and Lin Ku'er were still unconscious. Just as she was about to be unable to hold on any longer, she suddenly noticed a hollow tree hole from the corner of her eye. With a thought, she immediately brought the two girls with her and dove into it. Chapter 1193. As soon as she got into the tree hole, Li Xian'er's vision went black and she couldn't see anything. She stepped on a thick layer of rotten leaves. Her legs suddenly weakened and she fell to the ground. The two women she was holding also fell heavily. At this time, Li Xian'er's vitality was finally completely exhausted. After she fell, she fainted directly without saying a word. For a moment, there were three unconscious beauties lying on the ground. In this dark and damp tree hole, it formed a unique scene. The evil master that Li Xian'er sensed was West Mountain Elder. When he returned to his residence, he found that Sun Abayo was standing outside naked, holding a big wood in his hand and working hard. Not far away, one of the two wooden houses had collapsed, and the door of the other was wide open. He suddenly realized the seriousness of the matter. Sun Abayo. Wake the F***ck up. Seeing Sun Abayo looking at the wood with an intoxicated face, West Mountain Elder was so angry that he immediately operated his mental cultivation method, roared, and kicked him. Ah! Sun Abayo was still immersed in the wonderful illusion. When he suddenly heard this familiar roar, he was immediately scared witless. Then he was kicked so hard that he rolled down from the log. Look at what you have done. I told you to go and catch people, but why are you hugging a piece of wood? West Mountain Elder slapped him and said angrily, Hurry up and put on your clothes, what a waste. Ouch, don't hit master. I'll put on my clothes, I'll put them on now. Sun Abayo was so scared that he shivered. He quickly picked up the clothes on the ground and put them on. He looked around in confusion. What's going on? Wasn't he having fun with that slut just now? How did she disappear in the blink of an eye? What's the situation with the wood on the ground? Glancing at Sun Abayo, who was at a loss, West Mountain Elder angrily ran to the only remaining wooden house to take a look. When he found that there was no one inside, he couldn't help but get even angrier. He turned around and slapped Sun Abayo's face again and roared fiercely, Where is she? Where's the girl you caught just now? I don't know. Wasn't he here just now? Sun Abayo spun on the spot after being hit, but he did not dare to complain. Clutching his head, he hurriedly ran into the wooden house, only to discover that Lin Ku'er had indeed disappeared without a trace. From the looks of it, she should have been rescued by those two girls. Tell me, you brainless idiot, what else can you do? If you can't even keep an eye on a little girl, How am I going to explain this to the elders of the upper peaks? Elder Shishan angrily pointed at Sunabayo's nose and scolded. If it weren't for the fact that this guy still had some value, he would have already slapped this idiot to death. Master, I'm sorry. It's all because of a moment of carelessness that I fell for that little hussy's trick. Sunabayo lowered his head in fear and said, Don't be angry. I promise it won't happen again. Please forgive me this time. If you didn't have the ability to sense spiritual energy, do you think you would still be alive today? You really can't do anything, but you're good at spoiling things. Elder Shishan's anger hadn't subsided, and he scolded a few more times. Sunabayo listened obediently until Elder Shishan finally stopped. He asked carefully, Master, what are we going to do next? Elder Shishan snorted coldly, frowned and said, Hurry up and pack up. We can't stay in this place any longer. Otherwise, both of us won't have a good time. Sunabayo nodded repeatedly and quickly packed up the luggage in the cabin. Then he burned the cabin to ashes with a fire. Staring at the dim fire, Sunabayo couldn't help but recall the scene of being chased before. He subconsciously shivered. About a year ago, a martial arts expert suddenly appeared in the secular world. He was so powerful that he almost killed all the evil cultivators in Songning City. His strength was so high that no evil cultivator in the secular world was a match for him. They were killed until they couldn't fight back. Elder Shishan and Sunabayo couldn't escape the master's eagle eyes. The two of them were chased like stray dogs. They were extremely embarrassed. It was not easy for them to escape. Although they were lucky to save their lives, both of them were also seriously injured. Through the layers of connections in the inner martial arts world, Elder Shishan finally inquired about the master's information. It turned out that it was Song Qingshu of the inner martial arts world's Song family. He didn't know why he suddenly came to the secular world to kill evil cultivators. Although there were rules in the inner martial arts world that one couldn't interfere in the disputes of the secular world, evil cultivators were not included. Therefore, Song Qingshu's actions were not stopped by anyone. Elder Shishan, who learned of this situation, became more cautious. He took Sunabayo to hide in the deep mountains and forests for a few months, taking the opportunity to heal. Recently, he gradually recovered and began to carry out the task of the upper peak again. In fact, the task assigned to Elder Shishan was very simple. It was to find a woman with spiritual energy in the secular world. As for why the upper peak had such a need, Elder Shishan naturally didn't dare to ask. In short, the upper peak had clearly promised that as long as he could find the person, the upper peak would provide him with enough cultivation resources and all kinds of treasures. In the beginning, Elder Shishan was still worried about how he could find a woman with spiritual energy. However, later he accidentally discovered that his disciple, Sunabayo, actually had the ability to sense whether a woman had spiritual energy or not. Elder Shishan speculated that it might be because Sunabayo hid in the women's toilet all year round, so he was more sensitive to the smell of women. However, Sunabayo's ability was not strong. He could only judge whether a woman had spiritual energy after getting close to her. Therefore, Elder Shishan originally planned to use Lu Shuangshuang's body as a mobile furnace before Sunabayo, so that he could sense suitable candidates in Songning City. Unexpectedly, he didn't expect that Lu Shuangshuang would accidentally lose her virginity to Xiao Chen. When her body was broken, the furnace in Lu Shuangshuang's body was also destroyed. Elder Shishan had no choice but to activate the backup plan and let Sunabayo go out to sense the woman with spiritual energy. As a result, Elder Shishan never expected that they only had time to catch Lu Shuangshuang. During the second operation, Sunabayo was actually discovered. Not only did the other party discover Sunabayo, but they also deliberately came to the door. Although Sunabayo was spared, Elder Shishan estimated that it would not be long before the inner martial arts world would send more masters to encircle and annihilate the evil cultivators. In such a bad situation, Elder Shishan had to use the 36 stratagems again, which was to run away. Chapter 1194. Ugh. In the dim tree hole, Li Xiener let out a low moan and opened her eyes in a daze. After a while, Li Xiener gradually recalled what had happened and hurriedly raised her head to look at Kerlin beside her. She discovered that she was still unconscious while Hongzhu was sitting cross-legged on the ground, adjusting his breathing. It seemed that he had woken up long ago. "You're awake?" Hongzhu finished adjusting his breathing and exhaled a mouthful of impure air. He looked at Li Xiener and helplessly smiled bitterly. "It was fortunate that you were there last night. Otherwise, with my strength alone, I would not have been able to contend against that evil cultivator, much less successfully rescue Kerlin. Last night? What time is it now? Lysiana was slightly startled. She sat up and discovered that the sky outside the tree hole was gradually brightening. Lysiana silently calculated the time. She did not expect that she had actually been unconscious for several hours. Looking at Hongzhu's pale complexion, Lysiana shook her head and said, "Actually, you don't need to thank me. If you hadn't dragged that scum away, I'm afraid that I would have already been violated by him." It's nothing." Hongzhu smiled faintly, then suddenly remembered something and asked, "Right when we left last night, I remember that you didn't seem to want to go out of the forest as if there was some danger up ahead, so I told you to go deeper into the forest. Afterwards, I fainted. Did you notice anything at that time?" Recalling last night's encounter, Lysiana nodded with lingering fear and said, "When I took you to escape, I sensed another evil master coming in our direction from outside the forest. That master's strength was far above that scumbag. I guess it was his master or companion, so I didn't dare to go forward." "So that's how it was. It seems that we really underestimated our enemy." Hongzhu could not help sighing in relief. Fortunately, that son of Bio was quite lustful, so his willpower was not strong enough, which was why he fell for my charm technique. I'm guessing that he should have collapsed and died by now. For some reason, Hongzhu suddenly thought of Xiao Chen at this moment. He was the first person who had been able to remain clear-headed under the full force of his charm technique. But he remembered that he was only a low-level cultivator at that time, so how could he have such strong willpower and mental strength? "Don't mention that scum. Just thinking about it makes me sick." Lysiana pursed her lips and looked down to check her wound. She found that it had already formed a scab, so it probably wouldn't be a big problem. Turning her head, Lysiana nudged Lin Ke, attempting to wake her up. However, there was still no movement from her. Lysiana said in astonishment, "This is really strange. How could Lin Ke be unconscious for such a long time? Did that scum drug her?" "I'm not too sure about that. Before you woke up, I gave her a medicinal pill, but in the end she still didn't wake up." Hongzhu's thoughts were interrupted, and he shook his head faintly. She didn't know much about heretics, so she could only use normal medical skills to treat Kerlin, but it didn't seem to work. "Let me try. I don't believe that no matter how powerful those evil cultivators are, they can't be more powerful than our Five Elements sect." Lysiana operated her mental cultivation method, and just when she was about to pour her true chi into Kerlin's body, she was suddenly surprised to find that she had actually leveled up. Lysiana was originally at the peak of the 9th level of the chi refining stage, but now she had the strength of the consummate stage. She didn't expect that her cultivation, which hadn't increased for a long time, would unexpectedly break through in such a desperate situation yesterday. However, being happy was just being happy. Lysiana immediately restrained her mind and planned to wake up Kerlin first. Reaching out to grab Kerlin's wrist, Lysiana held her breath and slowly transferred her true chi into her body. At the same time, she also checked whether Kerlin was injured or not. After a round of inspection, Lysiana felt relieved. Kerlin didn't have any major problems. She was just hit by Son Abio's evil technique, so there was a black fog in her head, which was constantly affecting her brain nerves. That was why she was unconscious for such a long time. Lysiana operated her true chi and guided the black fog out of her body. When the black fog was completely expelled, Kerlin's eyelids moved slightly, and she woke up not long after. Blinking her eyes in bewilderment, Lin Ke suddenly leapt up. "Save me. There's a bad guy who broke into my room." Kerlin jumped 3 feet high and her head directly hit the top of the tree hole. The impact made her see stars, and she was in so much pain that tears almost flowed out of her eyes. "I say, Kerlin, aren't you being a little too dramatic? You didn't even look at your surroundings and just shouted at the top of your lungs. What if you attracted the enemy?" Lysiana said snappily, "Don't worry. Sister Hongzhu has already killed that scumbag. Also, my eardrums are about to burst because of you." "Miss Hongzhu, Miss Lysiana, how did you? What is this place?" Kerlin rubbed her head with tears in her eyes, and only then did she remember to look at her surroundings. After surveying her surroundings, Lin Ke discovered that this unfamiliar place was not her own room. Instead, it seemed to be some kind of tree hole. Just what kind of situation was this? "Aya, you were captured by a heretic cultivator earlier. Sister Hongzhu and I risked our lives to save you from the hands of the heretic cultivator with great difficulty, but then an even more powerful heretic cultivator came. We couldn't defeat him, so we had no choice but to escape. Now we can only hide here for a while. Li Xianer spread her hands and explained helplessly. So that's how it is. Kerlin had heard Lu Shuangshuang mention a few things about the martial arts world, and she also knew that heretic cultivators were bad people, so she was not surprised. She only timidly said with gratitude, "I didn't expect that you and Miss Hongzhu would be willing to take such a huge risk to save me. We've only just met. I really don't know how to thank you." "It's nothing. Although it took a lot of effort, we were still rescued." Hongzhu waved her hand, sighed and said, "It's a pity that we couldn't find Lu Shuangshuang, otherwise this trip would have been perfect." Shuangshuang was also captured by them? Kerlin was greatly shocked and then asked with some bewilderment, "But Shuangshuang and I are just ordinary people. Why would the heretic cultivators want to capture us? If you were really an ordinary person, we wouldn't have to spend so much effort to protect you." Li Xianer couldn't help but blurt out, "Actually you." Halfway through her words, Li Xianer suddenly stopped, not knowing whether she should tell the truth to Kerlin. If she told her, would she be able to accept it? Chapter 1195. Unable to come up with a solution, Li Xianer could only cast a pleading look at Hongzhu. "Actually what? Is there something different about me?" Kerlin couldn't help but feel a little curious when she heard Li Xianer's words and asked weakly, "Xianer, let me talk to Kerlin." Hongzhu nodded at Li Xianer, then bent his back and walked over to Lin Ker's side. Holding her hand he said, "Ker, you may not have heard what I'm about to say before, but don't be too surprised. I won't lie to you." "Oh." Lin Ker obediently nodded, her face filled with anticipation as she looked at Hongzhu. Hongzhu sorted out his thoughts and said, "Li Xianer and I are both martial artists. This time, we received a mission from our clan to come to the secular world to find a woman with spiritual qi in her body. Lu Shuangshuang originally met the requirements, so we contacted her. However, before we could confirm it, she was captured by an evil cultivator. Later on we discovered that you were also a suitable candidate. We were worried that you would encounter the same situation as Lu Shuangshuang, so we secretly protected you." "I have spiritual qi in my body? But why can't I feel it?" Kerlin asked in astonishment after listening to the story. She thought to herself, "These two girls aren't deliberately making up a story to trick me, are they? But they don't look like bad people." Hongzhu smiled and patiently explained, "Haha, this is very normal. Only some cultivators with special abilities are able to sense spiritual energy. For example, me and that evil cultivator kid who captured you earlier. At any rate, this is a relatively special ability. Li Xianer doesn't have it. You're also the same." "This really? Then why am I not as strong as a cultivator or can use all kinds of strange skills?" Kerlin still hadn't dispelled her doubts and asked with a face full of doubt. In fact, Kerlin had always had a desire in her heart. Although she had never told anyone about it, she had always desired to become a powerful cultivator. If she became a cultivator, not only could she avoid being bullied by others, but she could also go to the warrior guild to take on missions. She once heard from Lu Shuangshuang that some cultivators could take on simple missions in the guild, such as running errands or delivering letters, and they could earn tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. In this way, not only could he relieve the financial burden of his family, but he would also not have to worry about not being able to find a job after he graduated from university. He had heard that it was very difficult for university students to find a job. If he could become a cultivator, then the problem of finding a job would be easily solved. Although Kerlin wasn't like Lu Shuangshuang who fantasized about becoming a super powerful legendary cultivator like her idol, Yang Ming, she also had a small goal in her heart. Kerlin hoped that as long as she could become as strong as Xiao Chen, she would be satisfied. In Songning City, the reputation of the White Fox Swordsman was like thunder to the ears. Many cultivators had named the White Fox Swordsman as their idol. There were even many female cultivators who clamored every day to give birth to a little fox for the White Fox Swordsman. Kerlin knew that the White Fox Swordsman was Xiao Chen, but she had never told anyone about it. She didn't know how Xiao Chen was doing recently. It seemed that she hadn't heard from him for a long time. What has he been doing recently? That's right. Shouldn't he be married to the daughter of the Cheng family? But why didn't he go back to the morning market to sell breakfast? She had seen a back view similar to Xiao Chen several times, but in the end she realized that she had been mistaken. Ko-air, it seems that you've confused the concepts of spiritual energy and cultivators. While Kerlin's eyes were empty and her thoughts were running wild, Hongzhu shook his head with a faint smile and said, although there is spiritual energy in your body, you haven't gone through any systematic training. You also don't know how to use spiritual energy. Naturally, you can't become a cultivator. Is that so? Kerlin collected her thoughts and said with some disappointment, it seems that I still can't become a cultivator. Let me finish what I have to say. Hongzhu continued with a smile, you don't need to be too discouraged. As long as there is a suitable opportunity to stimulate the spiritual energy in your body, perhaps you can become an even more valiant expert. Kerlin's eyes lit up and she blurted out, really? Miss Hongzhu isn't lying to me, right? According to what you're saying, I can also become an expert like Xiao, White Fox Swordsman. Oh, you know White Fox Swordsman? Hongzhu was stunned for a moment. He carefully looked at Kerlin a few times and suddenly remembered that he had seen Xiao Chen's information before. This Kerlin seems to be the person Xiao Chen used to like? Thinking of the photo and the information, and then looking at the flustered and innocent Kerlin in front of him, Hongzhu could immediately determine that it was her. He had never thought that by a freak combination of factors, he would unexpectedly find a girl who was related to Xiao Chen. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? I don't know him because White Fox Swordsman is quite famous in Songning City, and Shuang and I have talked about him before, so I remembered him. Kerlin was startled and waved her hands in panic, her eyes flickering. For some unknown reason, Kerlin didn't want to expose Xiao Chen's identity in front of others, so she subconsciously covered it up. Oh, so that's how it is. Hongzhu could naturally see that Kerlin was lying, but he was too lazy to expose her, so he changed the topic and said, White Fox Swordsman is indeed very powerful, but as long as you are willing to make some sacrifices, you might be even stronger than him. Stronger than White Fox Swordsman? Can I really become such an expert? Kerlin was startled and asked with a blank expression on her face. According to her understanding, Xiao Chen was already a very powerful existence. According to what Miss Hongzhu said, could she be more powerful than Xiao Chen? What kind of existence was that? Of course you can, Hongzhu nodded and said, in fact, you have an excellent opportunity right now. I have a bit of strength and can help you become a super expert, but there is a precondition to becoming an expert, and that is, you must first complete a mission. Mission? What mission? Kerlin was even more confused. Could it be that after completing the mission she would become more powerful than Xiao Chen? Could it be that easy? Before I introduce the mission, I must first make one thing clear to you. Hongzhu's expression turned solemn as he earnestly said, this mission may endanger your life. Of course, you have the right to choose not to accept it and I will not force you. Chapter 1196. My life is in danger? Kerlin's entire body shook as she shrank back in fear. Could it be that I might die? How frightening. If it was as Miss Hongzhu had said, that I might have to pay with my life in order to become a super expert, wasn't that a little too extreme? In fact, she didn't have a particularly big ambition. She just wanted to live an ordinary life. Although she sometimes fantasized that she would suddenly become a powerful master one day, it was only in her nightmares and fantasies. Now that Kerlin knew that she had a chance to turn her fantasies into reality, but there was also the possibility of losing her life, the naturally timid Kerlin immediately thought of retreating. This idea was far too frightening and she did not even have the courage to try it. Miss you don't have to choose whether to agree or refuse right now. You can go back and think about it for a few days. Seeing Lin Ker's hesitation, Hongzhu smiled faintly and said, however, there isn't much time left for you because I still need to find other suitable candidates. I hope that you can give me a reply as soon as possible. Seeing Kerlin's timid appearance, Hongzhu did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, no one had ever attempted the sacrifice before and no one could say for sure whether they would lose their life. Thus, the participants needed to have sufficient awareness. Kerlin frantically raised her head to look at Hongzhu before turning to look at Li Xian'er. Kerlin suddenly noticed that there was a huge scar on Li Xian'er's leg. Judging from the fresh scabs and the bloodstains around it, it was most likely the wound she had received last night when she was rescuing her. Seeing this, Kerlin felt that she was being a little selfish. If Hongzhu and Li Xian'er had not risked their lives to save her, she would have lost her life long ago. What was the point of talking about life and ideals? Since they have shown me kindness, it is only normal for me to repay them. Besides, Hongzhu had just explained that I have a chance to become a top expert, but there is also a chance that I might lose my life. Even so, there is still a 50% chance, right? It is much better than being captured by the evil cultivators and then tortured to death. Kerlin pondered for a moment and took a deep breath. Just as she was about to answer, she suddenly thought of something and said, "That? I still have a question. What problem?" "As long as I can answer it, I will definitely tell you," Hongzhu said in a slightly surprised tone. "If I leave with you, what will happen to my parents?" Kerlin bit her lower lip and asked in a low voice, If I don't come back, who will take care of them in the future? My father's leg is still injured, and my mother has suffered for her whole life to support the whole family. I can't just leave them like this, right?" Kerlin's heart ached at the thought of her parents' hard work, and her eyes reddened. "Don't worry, we will give your parents a lot of money, enough for them to live out their old age." Li Xianer thought for a while and added, "In addition to these, if you have any other conditions, feel free to raise them. As long as they are not too harsh, we will satisfy them one by one." Hongzhu also felt a little helpless. Although she could understand Kerlin's concern, she could not think of any other way to make up for it other than money. After all, as long as Kerlin agreed to the ceremony, her life would be in danger. "Then, all right. I will agree to your conditions." Having obtained Hongzhu's promise, Kerlin no longer had any misgivings and simply nodded, saying, "But before that, can I go see my parents one more time? I want to say goodbye to them." In truth, Kerlin did not care about large sums of money or great strength, but she was a girl who knew how to repay kindness. Hongzhu and Li Xianer had saved her life, so she had agreed. "What? You agree?" Hongzhu was in a daze for a good while before he confirmed it with an incredulous look on his face. Hongzhu had originally thought that Kerlin would need some time to consider it, and had even been prepared to find someone else if Kerlin refused. He had never imagined that she would be so straightforward. Tell me about the specific details of the mission. I'm still a little confused." Kerlin forced a smile. Hongzhu looked at the confused Kerlin and was still a little worried in his heart, so he gave her a brief introduction of the relationship between the internal martial world's immortal cultivation sects and the ghost cultivation sects, as well as the immortal cultivation world. Then he explained to Kerlin that the opening of the immortal cultivation world required a woman with spiritual qi in her body to carry out the ceremony, as well as the dangers of the ceremony. Li Xianer also stared blankly at Kerlin from the side. Although this little girl looked a little pure and naive, she should not be the kind of girl who did not have her own thoughts, right? Why did she suddenly become so straightforward? "There's no need to think any further. After I go back and see my parents, I can go with you." Kerlin pursed her lips and said softly. With regards to Hongzhu's explanation, Kerlin did not really understand it, but after weighing the pros and cons, she still decided to go with Hongzhu to participate in the ceremony. There was no doubt that the gratitude of her parents for raising her was irreplaceable, but a person must know how to repay a debt of gratitude. Hongzhu and Li Xianer's life-saving grace was also very important to Kerlin. From Kerlin's point of view, since her life had been saved by Hongzhu and Li Xianer, she must repay them. As for the hardships her parents had endured to raise her, she could only repay them with the things that Hongzhu had promised her. If she had the chance to return in the future, she would repay them even more. "All right, since you've agreed, let's set off now lest we waste time." Hongzhu stared at Kerlin and sighed inwardly. In order to open the immortal cultivation world and obtain the rich treasures and cultivation resources inside, who knew how many happy families would have to be broken up? Doing this, was it really appropriate? Although compared to the evil cultivators of the ghost cultivation sect, the methods of the immortal cultivation sect seemed more humane. At least they would explain clearly and let people consider whether they wanted to participate in the ceremony, unlike the ghost cultivation sect who would directly rob them. But from another point of view, there was not much difference between the two. Both were sacrificing the lives of others in order to obtain certain things and obtain their own benefits. After escorting Kerlin back to Shanty Town, Hongzhu saw from afar that there were many policemen standing near her house. There were also many police cars parked there, filling the entire road. It was probably because Kerlin's parents had discovered that their daughter was missing that they had called the police. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.